All right, we are live. Welcome. This is Orion Rising. I am your host, Leonard O'Neill. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or good morrow, depending on where in the world you are tuning into this show. Show this out, show this out, show this out. All right, we are live Friday night. Law of One, welcome. Welcome, Denise. Welcome, Penny. I see you guys there. You guys are talking in the chat already. Share this out, show this out. I got to share it out as well. I was trying to share it out and I was having issues sharing it because my screen kept messing up, or at least I was scrolling wrong. And so by doing so, the banner was in the way telling me that I was sharing my screen, and that was causing me to then move the screen down and close the window that I was trying to share with. So that was annoying. So I had to take care of that. Let me take this banner down so you can see me here, and then we'll put me up into the full screen over here. I backed up to question 3 because I wasn't sure where we ended. So I don't know if we finished the entire session. I don't think we did. I only think we got about 4 or 5 questions in. So I decided to go ahead and start on question 3 and move forward from there. Even if we didn't, I want to recover that because as I was recapping, I thought, you know what? I know I went talking about that, but I wanted to recap that anyways. So I decided to do that. So welcome, everybody. Let me get back to the comments so that I can see her. Peter, welcome. Like I said, share this out. I just shared it out like a couple places and not as many as I would like to have, but I was, like I said, trying to get everything working. And my camera's working for a second week in a row. So I have no idea what I did, but it was stuck in Zoom for a year. And as soon as Zoom charged me, something happened and it reset. And now my camera's worked 2 weeks in a row. So now I'll expect it to work. And next week it won't work, right? So, okay. So anyways, so that we'll just pick up there. So today is, if you're in the northern hemisphere of the planet, today is the solstice. I believe it's today. It was either today or yesterday, but it's because it is full moon and a strawberry moon. They say that the full moon is going to appear, which it normally does, but they don't notice it, appear to be full for 3 days. So the apex is today of the solstice. And if you're in the northern hemisphere, and the apex of the full moon is also today. And the reason it's called a strawberry moon is because it is the season, this time of the year is when most of the strawberries are picked going forward that have been planted, because it's harvest time for strawberries. So the full moon nearest this time and the solstice is traditionally, starting back in the Native American days, called a strawberry moon. That's where that comes from. But we also, have this full moon landing on the solstice, which is an activation and makes things completely different. And then being the strawberry moon adds completely different. And we have an alignment that's happening as well right now within our solar system, which a lot of people, I forgot to post that so that you guys could see that, but you guys should look at that so that you can see it. I keep taking my glasses off and then I realize I have to start putting them back on so I can see you guys' chat, right? Yeah, get everybody in here. Where is everybody? Tag them, get them in here. Okay. So, sorry, I'm being talked to. Tag Stephanie because she's not in here either. She's over here talking to me in the chat in the messenger. Right, she posted something from me, and I'm not sure what exactly it's. I know it's from the Bible, but I don't know exactly what section and verse. I'm going to read it to you because it's actually kind of cool. She posted it and I don't know which one it is, but it's the 22nd verse of whatever this is, and it actually says the lamp of the body. This is in the Bible. Okay, the lamp of the body is the eye. Okay, if your eye is sound, your whole body will be filled with light. 23. But, and this is, now we're on to, verse 23. But if your eye is bad, your whole body will be in darkness. And if the light in you is darkness, how great will the darkness be? Meaning if you're self-serving. And so she circled it, highlighted it for me and sent it. And I don't know exactly which verse it is from the Bible, but I recognize that it is. And I said, yeah, they're talking about the illumination of your third eye. And if not, you're veiled. And she was like, and so many people, she says, and people think that the Bible does not have spiritual meanings. It does. And this is what I talk about. That's why I'm telling you guys this, because this is what I talk about when I tell people that the religions aren't wrong. They've just been corrupted into selling tickets or selling coffee. They're a Starbucks or a Walmart or a McDonald's. That's what they become, corporations instead of spiritual houses, which is what they were supposed to be. That now started thousands of years ago. Jesus was angry about the Hebrews and them turning the outside of the church into a bazaar where they were exchanging money and selling things every Sunday to make money. They do that now here in the United States. I don't know about wherever you are, but I know that every time I've ever gone to a Kaiser Permanente out here in California on a Sunday, almost all of them have a setup out front, vendors selling stuff. Now, I don't really get offended by that because sometimes you get some really good stuff out there. It's usually food and it's really good. I remember one time I was in Vallejo, which is pronounced wrong because it's actually a person's last name, Viejo, but everybody calls it Vallejo. All the names that are Spanish, or that one's not, or that one is too. All the Spanish dons who used to own land here in California have cities named after them, like Lafayette. Well, Lafayette was actually French, and Martinez or Martinez, Benicia, and Viejo are all cities that are border each other. And Pacheco, I'm actually related to the Pachecos, and everybody says their name's wrong. Everybody says it's Benicia or Benicia that you live in. It's actually from Don Benicia. So all the people who think they're saying it right and they're all uppity, the upper crust of rich people say, oh, it's Benicia, or no, it's Benicia. And I was living there and I was like, no, I actually did a historical tour of the Bay Area. And it's actually Benicia. And people are like, you don't know what you're talking about. I'm like, it's a Don. Look it up. It's a guy who used to own the land. And then it became the capital. And then Martinez, that's a little bit more authentic because some people want to say Martinez, but I'm like, no, it's the Martinez family, which is also related to the Pacheco family, by the way. They interbred because they were nobles. And then Viejo. And everyone says Vallejo, right? And so it's the way Americans slaughter everything anyway, all the names of all the stuff. Like during the 1970s, the United States was in war in Vietnam, in the Nam. It's actually pronounced Vietnam. Same thing with, Iran. You ask the people over there what they call their country, they call it Iran, right? So we Americans slaughter everything, and you Irish know that. I've had a couple of you tell me that, the way we talk and how we over accentuate so many things, and especially the ends of words as Americans compared to the way the English, the Irish, the Welsh, and the Scottish talk, where they drop off. That's what we say. You guys drop off everything, all the ends of all the words over there, right? So Woo Riders, DJ, welcome. Thank you, right? That person says, I'm here looking forward to this since last Friday, my first time viewing. Thank you for returning. So I don't remember where we left off as far as the session. So I backed up to question 3. If we finish the entire session, that's okay, because I want to recover this because of what we were talking about. So I'm going to pick it up there for all of you guys that are out there. But like I said, share this out. I just got today update on my book. So wait, if you're in the North American half of the northern hemisphere of the planet, today is the first official day of summer. It is the solstice. It is also full moon in a strawberry moon. I mentioned that earlier. If you're in the southern hemisphere, I believe you guys are going into winter, or are you guys ending winter and going into spring because you're 6 months ahead? Somebody in Australia, let me know what exactly is the solstice starting for you over there. I think it's spring now, right? Because it wouldn't be, because it's only 3 months to starting. Because if this is summer starting, autumn. No, because winter starts officially in late December or January. That's 6 months from now. So I guess you guys are in winter now. Okay, so let's start with that. Now, I just my book update for those of you. I just got the email in the last 2 weeks to proof the cover, front cover, all the covers, and then submit those. But now I got the emails today to approve the entire layout of the book, front cover, back cover, layout, inserts, the whole nines. And when I went to open them, I wish I would have opened them earlier today, because now the people from my publishers are all gone home for the day. But there was a link for me to digitally sign so they can send it off to go start printing. And the link didn't work. Neither link worked. So I had to re-email back my handler and say, hey, those links don't work. And I tried it on my cell phone and on my laptop and reset my Wi-Fi. and it doesn't work, please advise. So they have to send me another link, and I won't get it until tomorrow. But that means that we already set the price of what the books are going to be for ebook, for soft cover, hardcover. So now it's just a matter of sending it off to start printing. So that's a good sign. That means in the next 30 to 60 days, then that book should be out. But I'll get you guys the date as soon as I have that. So Rick just woke up. Good morning. Good Saturday morning to you, Rick. Now, today's the solstice, Rick. So are you guys starting winter down there, down under, or are you guys now moving into spring? Because this is the first day of summer, official, the solstice today for us up here in the northern hemisphere, and you're 6 months ahead. So I'm trying to figure out if that means you're in officially past autumn into winter today, or are you guys officially past winter going into spring today? Or are you guys at that midpoint in the, like we get for Christmas, being that the solstice there being the midway point? So let me know what's going on down under, because I'm confusing myself. I could look it up, but I'm on the air. Okay, so we're going to start on session 50. What are we on? 52, question 3. We're going to start there and then move forward. So what Dawn is asking about is people traveling. They were talking about traveling without moving. They were talking about some people moving physically to travel long distances, and other people using their mind to project there, and then other people using their mind to move solid objects across great distances without moving. So Dawn was asking the questions about that, and that's where we'll pick up, and then we'll move forward from there. Okay. So June 22nd, winter starts. It says today's June 22nd. Winter starts June 1st. Oh, see, so our summer didn't officially start until today. Today's the 22nd of June. And before that, we were not in actual summer until today. Today is actually a summer. So it's the winter solstice, the midpoint of the winter solstice for you then, right? So it is the winter solstice for you. So it's our summer solstice. Okay, so it is literally the 6 months of that. Okay, so you're not moving into you're halfway through. So we're halfway through the spring going summer, because the summer's only like officially is only 3 months, and then we go into autumn. So that's the other 3 months before winter starts. Okay, so I was right. So it is the winter, so winter solstice, even though it's not winter for you, or it is winter for you because it's summer for me. So you're at the winter solstice point. We're at the summer solstice because it's 6 months. Gotcha, Chief. Okay, thank you. All right. So, and keep sending those photos and videos, by the way, bro. I'm living vicarious through you, being knowing that someday I'm going to go down there. And I was actually unaware. Somehow I didn't pay attention to the dirt there being as orange as it is. When I lived in Arizona, it's orange like that. Some places darker, almost red. In our Southwest desert of the edge of California, Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas. And seeing you posting those pictures, I'm like, wow, we have that same dirt here up here in California, just north of me. Oddly enough, where the root chakra is, and you're at Uluru, where the navel chakra is also red dirt. It's actually a little bit more a tinge of red than it is orange, and your guys is a bright, beautiful orange. That's what we have here in our Southwest desert across the South, almost all the way to Louisiana, is that Texas has got part of that moving as well. So when I saw that, I was like, wow, I knew that Australia's dirt was not exactly brown, but I didn't know how bright orange it was until you took the pictures there at Uluru and your videos. And I was like, wow, that's cool, because I see dirt just like that. When I was in Arizona, if you're in a sandstorm in Arizona, you get the orange dirt all over you. If you're driving, it gets all over your car, your windows. If you're in your house, it gets all over the windows and everywhere over there, because that's what color the dirt is down there. It's orange, just like that, what you guys have there, which I didn't realize. And I think, wow, that's weird that. I wonder where else in the world has the same color dirt like that. And I know that parts of Africa have the red, which is up here by the chakra of Shasta. But isn't it odd? And I wonder. I've only seen Stonehenge in the grass, so I wonder what that is, what the dirt color is there, because Newgrange is where there's another chakra. So I wonder what color the dirt is, and just out of curiosity, as far as wondering if the planet's chakras align with orange dirt instead of, because we have black dirt down here. When you go further down, when I was in San Francisco Bay Area, it's black dirt. It's a black clay, and the dirt is black. It's not orange. It's not red. And then when you come up here, it becomes red. And I know that when you go into the South, when you're in South Carolina, Oklahoma, it's red there. So it goes from orange. It goes red up here, orange in the Southwest, and then turns red across the south of the United States. And then in the North, it's all black. Isn't that weird? Right, black maybe from volcanic, right? So maybe, right? Maybe it gets burnt, but so that's a good question, because where I lived in the San Francisco Bay Area, I butted up against what's called Mount Diablo, not because it's Devil's Mountain, but because there was these thickets, these thorn thickets that were there, and the natives said that it was the Devil's Mountain because of the thickets were so you could get killed and get stuck in them. So the cowboys who were chasing the natives, trying to kill them back in the day when they were trying to take over, the Mexican cowboys and then the white ones after that, trying to kill all the natives off of this land of California, they would chase them up on, and that mountain is a dead volcano. It's a volcano. And I lived at the base of that volcano my entire life. I have it tattooed on my arm right here. As a matter of fact, love that mountain. Most people look at it and go, oh, it's ugly, because it is not exactly the most beautiful mountain, but it's just covered in trees, and it's so tall. It's a mile high at its peak. And literally you go from 38 feet above sea level to a mile high just driving up the mountain to get to the top of it, because it was a volcano. Bam, right there. And all the dirt, of course, going out to the ocean from there is all black. So volcanic, right? Volcanic ash and the like. Okay. So the ground in Newgrange is brown, and the grass, it says, he wrote brown book and grass tears of joy. Oh, so that's the type of grass. Okay. So it is brown there. That's interesting. So in some places, and I don't know what causes that. I know that in Arizona, they say that it's the amount of copper that causes the ground to be that color, the rust color, the dirt. It's because of all the copper in the soil. I don't know if that is the case everywhere else. I just know that in Arizona and New Mexico, because Arizona is the copper state, as a matter of fact. So there was more copper found in the state of Arizona than anywhere else in the North American continent. In New Mexico, that region of the Southwest Desert. So they claim that the orange is because of the amount of copper that is in the ground, that it causes the dirt, the soil, or iron, right? That's good. Or iron, they would both do the same thing. Yeah. Faux red normally, right? So not exactly orange, but not exactly red. So it's two tints, pink in the orange, not 3 or 4. I used to work at a frame shop, and we used to have to know it was a frame shop in a what is it called, where you buy paints and do arts and crafts on our arts and crafts store. I worked for 2 of those for 10 years. So you had to get used to the idea of colors and tints in the color and how they blend through the spectrum. And I have a problem with colors anyway. Seeing problems. Joanne, welcome. I had a problem with seeing colors. I'm partially colorblind. Well, I can't say I'm partially. I'm not. I don't see black and white, but I only see 28 colors in the spectrum. So I had to memorize the different shades because I can't see them. So I had to learn what the color coordination was going from one color to a next, because I didn't know how bad it was until I was with my first wife, and we were going to, she was talking about painting the bathroom, and we went to a paint store, and we got this guy's attention, and she said, we're talking about painting our bathroom. And he said, so what color are you guys talking about? And she said, he doesn't have any say in that. And he looked at me like, wow, you're like completely whooped by your wife. And I just looked at him, and she went, no, it's not what you think. It's not that I'm not allowing him to pick the color. He's colorblind. So he has no idea how many colors there are. And he looked at me and he goes, how bad is your color blindness? I said, I don't know. I just know that it's bad. I said, I have all issues with all kinds of colors. And so he says, okay, we're standing in front of one of those big shelving units, with all of these cards sticking in them. And he said, tell me how many colors you see right here. And I started counting, and I was like, I see 28. He's like, that's 28 different colors. That's it. And I said, yeah, why? And he said, there are more than 10,000 colors on this board. Each one of those slots that you see, and it was literally 15 feet across with the slots only about a 1 inch wide. So there must have been like, 100 or more on each slot. And that went from the 6 foot level all the way down to the 2.5 foot above the ground. So I don't know how many that is. You can figure that out. And by an inch, going like 15 feet and up and down, 10,000 or so colors, 100,000 colors. And each one was completely different. So I thought that they had a whole row of each one color. And I thought that's odd that they would have all of those things for people to take home that they would just put in this big display. And it was because they were all different shades, blending from one to the other. And when you put some colors together, I lose the pink or the yellow that's in it. I can't see yellow most of the time. It turns white to me. So isn't that crazy? Right. So anyways, all right. So let's get back to what we're doing here. So I just found that when I've noticed the chakras, the earth chakras, I've noticed that they seem to be in areas where, first of all, volcanoes, and secondly, the ground is usually an orange or red color around the earth. Just so it's weird that that Newgrange is actually, brown. It's not black, but brown. And that is the third eye is moved into Ireland. So that one is which one is it that's there? The throat chakra that's still there, or is it the heart? The heart chakra. The heart chakra is in Newgrange. So that one's the green chakra anyway. So maybe, who knows? Okay, let's go ahead. It does. Penny says colorblindness happens more in men than it does in women. My son is colorblind as well. Yeah, it just depends. I remember I met a guy who I see peanut butter as brown, right? And I met a guy and he said, I can't eat peanut butter. And I said, oh, I love peanut butter. And he said, well, I'm colorblind. I said, me too, but I see it as brown. He said, I see peanut butter as green. He says, I can't eat it. He said, it looks like it's moldy. Yeah, I can't touch it. And I was like, okay, if it looked the same color as mold, you wouldn't be able to tell if it was moldy. So I wouldn't touch it either, probably. But yeah, I see peanut butter as brown. So isn't that crazy? I see some things like that. Women's makeup, to me, sometimes they just look like a crazy clown to me with their makeup on. And I look at people and I go, does she look like a clown to you? Or am I just seeing that? And people are like, no, she doesn't. She looks very pretty with that makeup job. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, my color blindness has me looking at her and I see Harpo, the clown. She just needs a red nose that you can go on. And they're like, really? And I'm like, yeah, especially when women wear red lipstick. There's a certain couple of shades of red lipstick that I look at and I go, wow. And if they have bigger lips, I look at them and I just wear the big shoes, Isn't that crazy? But the good thing is that camouflage doesn't work on me the way it works on all you guys. It confuses your brain and people can blend into the environment by wearing camouflage. Because I have problems with colors, you can't do that for me. I don't look, you guys don't rely on motion. You guys rely on color because that's what you have. I don't, because of having the color blindness. I look for motion, not color. And then if somebody is wearing, unless they're wearing a ghillie suit, which everyone doesn't understand what that word is, that word actually means a people suit, by the way, or folk suit. It's a Scottish word because they invented the ghillie suit. But if you're wearing a ghillie suit, you can fool me a little bit longer because they actually take part of the environment and stick it in the suit. So they literally look like a bush and they literally use the bush that they're trying to hide behind or the environment right there to do it. But camouflage doesn't work for me. Not very long at all. The second I focus, I have always been able to see somebody wearing camouflage trying to hide, always, even the paint. Where other people, I'm like, there's a guy right there. So I was one of the guys that the military would use to pick out snipers, and they would have to try and hide. And so they don't want you having color blindness, but they will employ you to help them train people and snipers. And I could look through binoculars or be in an area. But I also am tuned into motion. So if you move at all, even your breathing at the wrong rate, I will see that movement. Isn't that crazy? No, I'm reading what you guys are saying in the chat. Okay, so So Rick says, I spoke to an optometrist over the phone who I only been to once. She said that one pupil or one eye is oval shaped like a football instead of a circle when you've been would have been nice to tell me that when I was testing my eyes. Oh, well, that's not good, right? Yeah, that you have a problem with that. Well, you can just wear glasses, I guess, to, I don't know what they would do to fix that. Oh, because I don't know anything about that. But yeah. Okay. So let's get off of this stuff and let's start with the law of one. Okay. So like I said, share this out and we'll get started. I'm going to do a sound test. Like I said, we're going to start back on question 3 because I don't remember how far we got. And we're literally talking about now moving the wormholes, people mentally projecting, and the difference between each dimension. Because in the third dimension here, we're just starting to crack that ideology open of being able to astral project. So there's not very many people who can do it that way yet in the third dimension. So Dawn asked the question of fourth, fifth, and sixth dimension or density. What is the ratio? This is what I believe the question is that we're talking about now, of people that physically move or use the slingshot method. We talked about that last week, or mentally move from one place to another by projecting to where they're going to. Okay. So let's do a sound check. You guys let me know if you can hear it okay, and I'll turn it up if you need to.
52.3 Questioner. I would ask this question in order to understand the mental disciplines and how they evolve. Do 4th dash, 5th dash, and 6th density positive or service to others orientation social memory complexes use both the slingshot and the personality discipline type of effect for travel, or do they use only one? Ra. I am Ra. The positively oriented social memory complex will be attempting to learn the disciplines of mind, body, and spirit. However, there are some which, having the technology available to use intelligent energy forces to accomplish travel, do so while learning the more appropriate disciplines. 52.4 Questioner.
See, so literally that was the question asked right there by Dawn about 4th, 5th, and 6th density. And now Raw is explaining the evolution of, and he'll go into more details, explaining the evolution of the percentage of people as they transition, start moving into the different forms of travel that are not physical in the physical sense. Because as you move up, 4th, 5th, especially into the 6th, and he talked about that, how if you get halfway through the 6th, they get very confused and they don't travel much at all because at that point they're stuck and they realize that. And then they have to admit it to themselves that they are, and then repent and go back to being in service to others to continue moving. So you're literally losing your physical body as you move up 4th, 5th, 6th. Halfway through the 6th, you end up with, by that time, you have almost no physical body left except for the spiritual and being of light in this physical place. That is what represents you to the physical place, is the light, your shining of the light. Like when people say the light of God or whatever, right? They start seeing that. Okay. So thank you. Thank you both to Peter and to Denise for letting me know that the sound is good. All right, let's continue.
Then I am assuming in the positively oriented social memory complexes that a much higher percentage of them use the personality disciplines for this travel. Is this correct? Ra. I am Ra. This is correct. As positive 5th density moves into 6th, there are virtually no entities which any longer use outer technology for travel or communication. 52.
See, so literally going from 5th density into 6th, there you go. No one is using physical machines for communication or travel anymore. So by the time you get into the 6th, your physical body is almost completely gone, and you're already transitioning into doing all travel mentally. So you're literally, if you were to go to the third dimensional Earth and try to physically have people see you, you would project your mind there, astral project, and then construct a human or whatever body so that they would mentally believe you were standing there, which is what Ra says they did when they got here in Egypt back in the day. Okay, so let's continue.
5 Questioner. Could you give me the same information on the negatively oriented social memory complexes as to the ratios, how they use the slingshot or other effect, personality disciplines? Ra, I am Ra. The fourth density negative uses the slingshot gravitic light effect, perhaps 80% of its membership being unable to master the disciplines necessary for alternate methods of travel. In fifth density negative, approximately 50% at some point gain the necessary discipline to use thought to accomplish travel. As the sixth density approaches, the negative orientation is thrown into confusion and little travel is attempted.
See, so literally, even in the negative, in the fifth, they start to learn how to astral project as well, so they don't have to physically move from one place to another, right? But then, as they're approaching the sixth, they get confused, so they just stop moving, they stop traveling, and they're trying to figure out what's going on. And it's only when they realize that it's because we're not moving up anymore that we have to now admit that the other way is the only way to continue to ascend. Otherwise, that's your purgatory. That's what hell truly is. You're not moving from there. You're stuck there for all of eternity. You can stay there as long as you want, but you're not moving up. You're not going to gain anything else. You're not going to gain any wisdom. You're not going to gain any power. You're not going to gain any more anything than what you have right now. So people down here that, they're just learning to be evil for the very first time, and they're being evil, and they're like, nope, we're superior and we're in control of everything, and we are only in this place. That's it. You lose all of that as you move up because there's less and less of the physical, first of all. So all of your riches go away, and then you can only go after each other and rule over each other and hold them as I am the chieftain or the Satan or the greatest evil. And it doesn't matter to anybody but just you guys anymore. And the only victims you start having are one another. You don't have innocent victims anymore. You have other evil victims. You just have people that are beneath you. And they don't realize that, don't want to know that, don't want to believe that. And it doesn't matter. If you don't look up at the sky and you claim the sky is purple, and until you look up at it, or you don't get to see what the color of the sky is. And if the sky is in fact blue, and you say, nope, it's purple, I can only see purple, it's purple, I'm telling you it's purple. Just because you don't look at the sky doesn't mean that it's not actually something else. And that's the way evil is. They refuse to see anything but what they want to see. And that's actually what that Bible verse that Stephanie had posted to me actually meant. The same. That came out of the Hebrew Bible. All right, let's continue.
What travel is done is perhaps 73% of light/thought. 52.6 questioner. Is there any difference then, at, say, close to the end of fifth density in the disciplines of...
That's funny, Rick. Right, it's Saturday morning for you, and you ran in to grab some milk out of the refrigerator. He says, I went to grab milk out of the refrigerator and grabbed a beer. That's hilarious, right? Because you were like in a hurry, got to do this, and I'm going to got to do that or whatever. What am I doing with a beer? That's funny. That is funny, brother. All right, here we go.
Personality required for this travel between positive and negative orientation. Higher fifth density. Ra, I am Ra. There are patent differences between the polarities, but no difference whatsoever in the completion of the knowledge of the self necessary to accomplish this discipline. 52.7 questioner. Am I correct, then, in assuming that discipline of the personality, knowledge of self, and control, shall I say, in strengthening of the will would be what any fifth density entity would see as those things of importance? Ra, I am Ra. In actuality, these things are of importance in third through early seventh densities. The only correction in nuance that we would make is your use of the word control. It is paramount that it be understood that it is not desirable or helpful to the growth of the understanding, may we say, of an entity by itself to control thought processes or impulses except where they may result in actions not consonant with the law of one. Control may seem to be a shortcut to discipline, peace, and illumination. However, this very control potentiates and necessitates the further incarnative experience in order to balance this control or repression of that self which is perfect.
Right, so literally, you're supposed to learn that lesson down here, that control here is literally something that negative entities do. People that are in service to self, they need to control everything around them. They need to control the people. They need to control money. They need to control the power. All of that is in the physical. And the only way that you can truly ascend is that you have to give up that. When we talk about that, I don't know if you guys have ever heard me. I'm sure you have. If you've been following me long enough, we talk about you have to surrender to everything. And people are like, what do you mean surrender? I mean, give up control. You don't have control over anything. And you need to realize that you're supposed to live within the ebb and flow of the universe, not trying. And that's what our problem is, not trying to control it. That's what our problem is in the physical place, and why it is that we're destroying nature. If you believe the people telling you about the environment, that it's going to kill us. And it's, what's funny about that is that every other year, they're like, we're going to be dead in 10 years. 10 years comes, they go, we're going to be dead in 5 years. 5 years comes, they go, we're going to be dead in 20 years. 20 years gets closer, and they go, we're going to be dead in 10 years. That's what they've said since I've been alive. First, it was, we're going to freeze to death because the water is the ice, we're going into an ice age. That was what I lived with all the way up until the 1980s. And then one day they just stopped talking about an ice age and just started saying that we're going away from the opposite direction, and that all the water is going to boil and all the ice caps are melting, and it's going to flood the earth, and the earth is going to be hotter than it's ever been ever. And now they keep trying to say that we have the hottest on record, and literally people have shown. When you turn on the news on every channel, they have, I showed this to my sister when she was here just on Tuesday. You literally turn on the news and it says extreme heat warning across the United States. It's summertime. It's going to be hot. So literally I showed her that yesterday. It said the temperature was an extreme heat temperature in Phoenix, Arizona. It was 93. I said, it is the 20th, because today's 21st. It is the 20th of June. 93 degrees at Phoenix Sky Harbor Airport is cold for the 20th of June. The temperature there on average is usually, if it's not on the tarmac, because the tarmac is even hotter, but the ambient temperature is usually 125 or above in Phoenix in June and July. Okay. And it was, and that the peak heat of the day was 106. That's considered a cool day. If it's below 110, in June, July, and August in the state of Arizona, New Mexico, and especially the west part of Texas, but most of Texas, then that is considered, in those months, is considered, if it's below 110, it's considered cool. Okay? So they're saying extreme heat warning. There was a guy that showed the news, and he showed the news showing the national temperatures at the exact same time in 1969, 1975, 1985, 1995, 2005, and the average temperature between June, July, and August across the United States was the same average. Come forward to 2024, the average temperature across the United States on that exact same day was the exact same temperatures that it was since 1969, 70, 75, and 80, except every time before the year 2010, they showed green numbers across the whole United States for the same temperatures. And then all of a sudden, one day, everybody in the news started showing red and saying extreme heat warnings for the same temperatures on average everywhere across the United States on every day. Okay. And that's what they do now. They're like extreme heat warning, and 100 million people are affected. And I'm like, it's summertime in North America. The temperatures everywhere go between 85 and 135, depending on what part of, if you're in the desert or not here in the United States, in June and July, especially, and then in August in some places, always. The first year I moved in 2013, I moved to Arizona. The day the first day I woke up in Arizona, because we got there at night, the first day I woke up in Arizona, it was April 6th, actually April 7th, because it was the next day. April 7th in Queen Creek, Arizona was 107. That summer, in this time of the year, starting at this time of the year, it was 127 in Phoenix, and we lived 45 minutes outside of Phoenix. And by July 4th, it was 137 degrees in Phoenix that day on the 4th of July. And you can look that up. Okay. So literally, if things go the way they are currently going right now, it's only 106 on the 21st of June. July 4th will probably be about 117. That's a cooling trend for the state of Arizona. That's below average. Okay. So they're lying about that. And then they're claiming we're all going to be dead in 10 years now, because 2 years ago they said it was 12 years. So some of us pay attention to that, and they just keep pushing it out further and further and changing the dates to get you to believe that we're all going to die. Right. And here's the thing. Here's the other thing that I want to announce. Some of you may already know about this because it might be going on in your country, but all car companies have decided that the electric car is just completely useless. Nobody wants them. People who are buying them are turning them back in because they're crap. And all the car companies are now revamping over here in the United States. They are, and they're all going to hydrogen. And you're going to see pushback for that. And let me explain to you why. If you know anything about hydrogen cars, you don't need me to tell you this. But if you don't, here's why. Okay. Hydrogen cars, the only thing that comes out of the exhaust is water. So as you're driving, water is trickling out of the back of the exhaust. So people are already starting to panic with, what are we going to do on the cold days when it's frozen and everybody's driving? And if they have a hydrogen car, we're going to have nothing but ice slicks. Oh, you mean like as if it's raining and it snows, and if it's raining and it freezes and we have black ice, which already happens anyway. So now they're trying to say, well, then everyone's going to have to start using those tires that have the little metal spikes like cleats on football and baseball and soccer shoes have. They have the same thing on tires. The first time I saw them, I was 8 years old here in California, and my cousin had them, and we were up in Tahoe where their cabin was, and we got in the car and it was going. I was like, "What the heck why is the car vibrating?" And he pulled over and got out and showed me, and they have steel spikes that are rounded that crush the ice when you drive, so that you don't have to worry about black ice. So we already have the technology for that, but people are already starting to go, all this water's going to be coming out and it's going to freeze instantly. We're all going to crash. And I'm like, no, it just means you're going to have to drive with snow tires, which is what most people are already doing anyway. All right. So let's get back to the positive. So the positive is, and I know this because I've heard this from car companies, by the way, that they're all going to shift over to hydrogen, which is the way of the future. It should be. And what happens is, when a car is driving, a hydrogen car actually purifies the air. 1 hour of driving a hydrogen car cleans the carbon out of the air of the amount of one human breathing for more than a month, exhaling. Okay. So the truth is, if they want to clean the atmosphere, hydrogen cars, just by people driving them, is going to clean up all the emissions out of the sky, all of the smog, and it's going to clean all that out and purify it. And the only thing that comes out there's no emissions except for water, vapor that comes out of the back. And then you go and get a shot of hydrogen, fill up your car and drive on. So that's why no one wanted anybody to have any part of it, because think about the climate activists all around the world. It's going to go away if everyone starts driving. They're not going to have any money. There's not going to be any money going to any government or any company that is making their living by telling you the Earth's coming to an end and we're going to die if we don't do anything, because hydrogen vehicles are going to reverse. If everybody goes to hydrogen, if we have 10% of the vehicles, we can clean the entire atmosphere in less than 50 years. If in 30 years or 40 years or 50 years, we end up with all combustion engines off the market and we have all hydrogen, we will clean the atmosphere of the Earth, other than the emissions coming from, and the factories won't be billowing stuff anymore because they won't be manufacturing gasoline. So all of the smog in the world is going to be gone and reversed in 50 years if we start driving hydrogen vehicles. It'll take about 10 years to fully get all of the charging stations in place. So the truth is, it's going to take about 50 years to get a conversion over. But that's normal anyway. It's what they should have been looking for with electric cars. But they were trying to get everybody to switch in 8 years, forcing everybody to switch to electric cars in 8 years when the infrastructure was not even there. The infrastructure for hydrogen is going to take a while as well. But it's going to be faster, and it's 100% better for the environment. You can look that up, right? So why would they want to clean the world, Neil? But why wouldn't they? Well, because they're making money off of it. They're the ones causing it with fossil fuels. And then, I even showed you guys that literally there was a guy that was filming, and he showed you that there was a diesel generator running. And what was it powering? All the bank of electricity to charge the electric cars. Okay. Because 80% of all electricity is created by fossil fuels still. Why do they not want to clean the atmosphere? Because they're making billions, trillions worldwide off of selling you on the idea that the world's coming to an end and you have to change your life so that we can clean the atmosphere. They're making all kinds of money. It's not as much as pharmaceutical companies, but they're making as much money as the car companies are. So they don't want that to go away. It's their cash cow. Anybody who is a scientist who is making a living, or a company who's making a living with that, they're going to lose their jobs, because now they'll still have a job if they want one, but it'll be just showing how well everything's going and that we're all fixing the atmosphere. You have to realize that this system that you're living under is not designed to help you. It is designed to hinder you. I was just watching I don't know if I forwarded it to you guys, but there was a guy who literally was a farmer, and he was showing you how to live off the grid and start going back to growing your own food and having chickens. And he was telling you what they're doing. What the environmentalists are claiming that people who are farming chickens on their own are the biggest problem with bird flu, because they're not doing it right, and their chickens are somehow causing the farms that are the big corporations who have chickens that are there for sale for the rest of the world. Somehow this farmer from downtown with 5 chickens, his chickens are sickly, and somehow that's transferring to the farms of these corporations. And that it's not the corporations that are causing the bird flu, it's the individual. And the reason for that is they don't want the individual growing their own food. They want, and they're trying to regulate that. In England, for instance, you have to register how many animals, so they know how many animals that you have, how many chickens that you have, that you're growing eggs. You have to tell them. You have to have permission to do that. They are controlling, here's how this is on point, they're controlling every avenue, and they're trying to lower the amount of food that you can grow in your own house, because they don't want you having too much, because they don't want you giving it to your friends, family, relatives, or selling it, because they're trying to keep you from starting your own company and becoming their competitor. Do you understand that? It is the same control that they have by not teaching you how to succeed and create your own company and become a competitor of theirs. They have the courses in schools there for you, but they don't make you take them, and they don't advertise about them. The ones that they advertise about are all the worker bee slave programs, not entrepreneurial programs that will have you compete with them. So you don't know how they made their millions. You don't know how they're keeping their millions, because they're not allowing you to learn that. And people who go out of their way and go, how did those rich people get rich? What are they doing? How did they get that big? Those people go and look for the courses on how to do those things. And then they start applying the exact same method that those guys did. They can't stop you from doing that. But what they do is, as soon as you start getting big and they can see that you are making money, they go to you and try to buy you out. And if you won't sell, then they try to get you convinced that you should be on the stock market, so they can short your stock with hedge funds and destroy you and try to buy you out. This is what companies do. And they'll hey, I'll give you $1 billion. You'll never have to, if you ever watched Yellowstone, that's what they were literally using, that method on the Duttons. We're talking about generational wealth. Your great-great-grandkids will never have to work again. You guys will be rich forever, beyond your wildest dreams of avarice, to use a Star Trek term. And that's what they do. They'll throw money at you because they don't care. They'll give you a $2 billion, $10 billion. That's what they were going to give them. They were going to give them $100 billion for their land, because they would stand to make trillions over the next 35 or 40 years off that land. Do you see? So they're not afraid. And most people are greedy, and they'll be, wow, wait a minute. Right? Rob Portnoy, same thing happened to him. He created an app And it became worth $1 billion. And they came after him and they were going to destroy him, and they bought it from him. He sold it to him. Took $1 billion. Then they ran it into the ground, couldn't run the damn thing, sold it back to him for $1. He took it up to $1 billion company again. They sold it to him for $2 billion. They bought it from him. He took it. Now he's got $3 billion in the bank. He took it. They again destroyed it, couldn't run it, and ran it into the ground, and they wanted to get rid of it. He said, I'll take it. They gave it back to him a third time. And the corporation is now worth more than $1 billion again, because he was an entrepreneur, is an entrepreneur, and understood how to do this. And he says, I'm the only person in history who sold his company twice and still is worth more than $5 billion now, because he just waited and said, I'll buy it from you. And they were like, we don't care. Well, you can have it. So he took it. He learned how to make money. Most people don't take civics classes. They don't take economics classes. They don't take business classes. They don't require them anymore. So you don't know about it. The same thing goes for farming. They're literally saying you can't grow this amount of crops. You can't have livestock in the cities anymore. So they're pushing you out so that you can't sell your product to the people in the city. Then they're making it illegal for you to sell your product, and they're lowering the amount of what you can buy. All of that is control, and all of that is being done so that they stay rich. Here's a perfect example. Charles Payne, who I have 2 of his books right here that I read, he was on the news yesterday or today, this morning. And he was talking about how they're saying, and people buy into this, our economy in the United States right now, the stock market is at an all-time high. And so we're making all kinds of money, and Donald Trump is lying, and that all the people are thinking we don't have any money, and we're making more money than anyone else in the world. When you hear them say that, that doesn't mean you. That doesn't mean me. When they say we're making more money and the stock market is great, the 1% of the people who own the corporations are making a fuck ton of money. Everyone else in this country is not. Okay. He also talked about the money during COVID and how they gave this stimulus money out to everybody across the world. All you guys did was take that money like everyone else and spend it. So all of the money for COVID that went out to the pharmaceutical companies to make the shots, they gave them like $100 million, and they net profited from your medical insurance and the government, for those of you who didn't have any medical insurance, about $10 trillion in profit. Pharmaceutical companies who made the shot. And they got money, your taxpayers' money, to do it, didn't pay us back any of the profits, kept it all. Then they gave out stimulus checks to everybody to pay for your employees, to pay you. So you had money during COVID to compensate because you weren't working. And what did you do? You spent it all. Where did all that money go? To the corporations. Went to all the companies for everything that you bought. McDonald's, Taco Bell, going to the store, going to movies. All that money went uphill. Didn't go downhill. Didn't stay with us. It went uphill. So all of the profits from COVID and all of the stimulus money from COVID has now trickled up to and is in the bank accounts of the 1% people who started the entire endeavor. That is what I was trying to tell the world, is the Hegelian dialectic. They literally created this problem, gave you a cure that they already were inventing because they were the ones creating the plague. Then they sold it to the governments. The governments bought it from them, paid them money to make it, which they already had it made, to fast track it, which they already had. And they just waited a couple of months and went, here it is. And then they charged all of the insurance companies money for the shot, and they took all of that money. So the rich people who own everything made, just off of COVID in the last 4 or 5 years, almost 5 years now, worldwide, about $125 trillion. 1%, the 1% who thinks they own this world, made 18 times the gross domestic product of the entire planet country, because everybody gave them all of their money. That is the control that they have, and that's why they're doing that. So they don't want the environment to be saved, because they're the ones that are creating the problem. They're the ones that are mining all of the oil. They're the ones who have the factories blowing it all out there because you guys are driving your cars everywhere. So am I. We're driving our cars everywhere, burning up all that fuel, trying to, because they don't want us to live next to where we work. They're very rare. Like with Rick. Rick's got a job where he lives on site. That's rare. Most people commute an hour or so to get to work, burning up that fossil fuel. Why is it that they do that? Why don't they have you? I'll tell you what, we need you to work in San Francisco. We're going to give you a place in San Francisco. No, because San Francisco is a rich place where they want rich people to pay to live there. So you got to live out in the suburbs where it's cheap, where those rich people don't want to live. So you got to live in that crappy ass suburb town over here. And so then you also have to commute. You're either taking the train or you're taking a bus or you're taking a plane or you're taking a ferry or you're driving your car to get here. And guess what? You don't get to get that money for free at your job. You got to pay for that yourself. Do you see? And then when you're buying products, you don't buy products that are local. They're shipping all your local stuff across the country to the other people to keep the economy running. So you're getting milk that isn't like I lived in Arizona. That's where all the milk farms are. It was rare that you could buy in a regular store milk that came from Arizona, but all the milk from Arizona was being sold in New York and Pennsylvania and Connecticut and Maine, okay, and California. Do you see? Same thing. All the California vegetables, the fruits and nuts, they all go back east. That's how they keep the economy running because it's fake. They ship everything out there, and that costs money for people to drive it and fly it. And then they sell it to all the people out there, and then all their goods come out here. That keeps their fake. That's the only way they can keep the fake economy running is to cross-pollinate. Right now, if I buy something from the vitamin company that I buy from Swanson Vitamins, it gets shipped from the East Coast every single time. My sister has the app on her phone. I go to the website. She says if I buy it on the app, it comes from California. So if she goes on the app and buys the same product, she gets it in 2.5 days from Southern California. I go online because I don't want to download their app. I go online to their .com and I order it, and it ships from frickin' Pennsylvania all the way out here, and it takes 7 to 10 days to get here. My sister orders the same product and she gets it in 2.5 to 3 days. Snail mail. That's how they do things. You're unaware of that. You don't realize. The only way FedEx can stay in business and the only way is to ship things around the world. If people aren't shipping goods around the world, they don't make any money. So if you're not buying a product from China, FedEx goes out of business. Do you understand that? That's how that, so they don't want anything to change. They want it to be status quo, and you living in fear when they change the narrative. And they'll do this in probably another 20 years, if that. All of a sudden, they'll be telling everybody, nope, everything's going to freeze. We're going into an ice age. That's the way it was in the 70s. That's the way it was forever, starting in the 40s, the 50s, 60s, 70s, and then it was in the 80s or in the early 90s, somewhere in the late 80s, early 90s. One day, all of a sudden, it was global warming. And prior to that, it was global freezing, okay? And they didn't give any explanation as to why things changed. And if you push them on it, they go, well, we did more investigation. We have better techniques now. And we realized when we went up there that the ice was melting. No one noticed the ice was melting for 45 years until, was there nobody checking that? And then all of a sudden you guys returned to the ice after 40 years and said, wait, this is melting. And that's what they have you believe, that nobody was looking and noticing. The people are living up there in Greenland and Iceland. And nobody seemed to notice in Greenland and Iceland that the big ice sheet that was out 5 miles is now at their doorstep, and all that's dirt now. No one saw that until scientists came from the United States and walked up and went, didn't the ice used to be out here? Oh yeah, a long time ago. How come you didn't tell us any of that? Because I don't know. Do you see? That is the literally what they're trying to sell. Why? Because they're making money off of it. That's the whole purpose. That is what was in the handbags. This is what Ra's warning about. The entire endeavor. People think, let's get into that, right? Let's get into that before we continue with what we're talking about here on in this session. Let's talk about the overall picture of what Ra's warning about. The Orion Crusaders coming here, who you know is the Anunnaki, with the little controlling of your pineal gland, the cone in their hand, and the little handbag and the scrolls in their waist. Everyone says, well, that's the plans of how to create this civilization. and they control it. What does that entail? That's where it stops with 99% of people's idea or understanding or understanding of what that whole endeavor is. Well, they created this society and they control it. So to what extent, what exactly does that mean? Everything I've just said to you in the last 25 minutes, almost a half an hour, is a definition of what is in the plans, in those scrolls. All of those controls. I wish I had I didn't have it. I don't have it put up. I'll put it in the class chat. So those of you who are not on Messenger who are listening to me around the world, you're going to have to message me and I'll send you this. I got this from somebody who was posting it online, and it's literally, they put together, it's a photo that they put together the timeline of the Orion Crusaders, the Anunnaki, from the time they got here and their control and everything they've done. And when you first look at it, it looks like it's complete chaos until you start reading something and then follow the arrows that are pointing from one place to another. And it's all from different timelines. And it literally tells you the history of this world, the second that the Anunnaki got here, the second that the Orion Crusaders got here, and everything they've controlled. And I still haven't read it all, because when you look at it, you got to zoom in. You zoom into a corner, it could take you an hour to read all the stuff on the corner, and it's going to send you out of the corner. And there's other arrows coming back in that you're going to look at, and you're going to go out. And everywhere you look on that entire 8.5 by 11 photograph, you have to zoom in to read all the words. And it is just in the entire history of the world, not military history, not religious history, but the control mechanism and the influence of the Anunnaki, the Orion Crusaders, from beginning until today. And I was given that, and I'm like, I still haven't read all of it. It's like the Book of Kells. It's going to take somebody eons. I don't know who created this. And I keep trying to verify it because I'm looking at it and then going, oh, let's authenticate this. So I know that it wasn't created by some AI, right? Because AI always has mistakes, because AI goes by the lies and the truth on the internet. And the AI doesn't discern the difference between the two. AI just grabs everything off of the internet and slaps it together. And then some AI is designed so that you can recognize it. And people point that out, where AI puts spelling errors or they double letters in words. And that's done part of the programming. They haven't figured, those people are being honest so that you see that it is AI. The other people who are evil are trying to program that out so that you don't notice the errors from AI. And so the AI is just giving you this stuff. And that's where people are like writing their term paper. Some guys did that in their law class, and they wrote their final exam, their term paper, had AI write it. And AI was creating complete cases. And the teacher was like, this case doesn't even exist. Where did you get this information from? It's not real. What? And they got caught because they used AI, and they had no idea that AI just made up cases for them. They thought AI was pooling real cases from the internet, and they were going to get away with it. So they haven't perfected AI, thank the gods. But everything that is the control mechanism of what they're doing and just how vast it is beyond your rational capacity for rational thought. Because everything is, when you think of it and somebody says one of these things or any of these things or a lot of them, you're like, that's a conspiracy theory. But when you see somebody actually put it down and show you the proof, this is the timeline when this happened, you can look it up in history, and then this is where it's attached. And when other events happened at that exact same month and year on the world, and what they're attached to and who created them. And you can look every one of them up and fact check them to see if it's true. I've done that since I've gotten it. And some of it I already knew, so I didn't have to. But some of it I was like, is that real? Let me look that up. Wow, okay, that really was that way. And those people really did do that. Let's look up some more. Okay, so you can spend the rest of your life trying to fact check what these guys did. And I'm sure that some people are going to do that because they're going to go, there's no fucking way that somebody put all this together and it's accurate. because I thought the same thing. So I held on to it for a while I was looking it up before I started giving it to people. And every time I've done that, I'm like, this is legit. So I'm giving it out to people to look at because it is insane, because you can say this isn't true and I'm going to prove it. I'll wait. You can run after it all you want. Go down that rabbit hole, because there are there's got to be millions, no exaggeration, millions of dates and things that they have done that are all connected in ways that no one realizes. And somebody put it all together. Okay. And you should look at it, because that is the extent of the operation that they're doing globally and have done always. So when people say, like Donald Trump says they rigged the election in 2020 and got away with it, and they're like, there is no definitive proof that we did anything. There is, but he died by 1,000 slashes, which is comes from the Middle East. It's one of their sayings. There's no one big thing that is obvious that affected the entire election. But what they did was they literally made sure that every place where elections were counted, they had their people embedded in all of those places. And they changed little things in every single place. And people go, there's no way they could orchestrate that. The fact, and I've posted the video of our government who's investigating this, the fact that January 6th had more than 250 Secret Service and FBI agents embedded in that entire network should tell you something. Literally, it's beginning to look a lot like Christmas, beginning to look a lot like everything was orchestrated by the Secret Service, the CIA, the NSA, and the FBI. Orchestrated. January 6th was a coup orchestrated by internal deep state personnel. Every bit of it. The people who went to march, who were drummed up to, we're going to go and march and break the windows. The people who went there to do that literally had 10 FBI agents embedded in their group online. And they were the ones stoking the fire to get people to do that. And some people found that guy who was standing there going, no, we're going to go into the Capitol. They were filming him going, this guy's a Fed. Why is it that guy who was claiming to tell people on video, you see him going, no, we need to break in those doors and go into the Capitol. And he was in multiple places for 3 days prior to that, drumming people up and then waving them on, go, go. Why is it that our federal government said, no, we checked him out and he's fine? But a 67-year-old, 68-year-old woman went to jail because she walked into the state capitol after somebody broke the windows. But that guy, who was literally telling people to do that and create violence and break in, no one even knows where he is anymore. He disappeared. He's still alive. They found him in Texas. But nobody can touch him. The second you go near him, the FBI shows up at your house, even if you're the federal or police from a state, marshals, and they tell you back off or we'll put you in jail. Why? That's true. You can look that up. I'm not making this up. It's not a conspiracy theory. And if you don't believe me, let me know and I'll give you the interview. I'll send it to you, the interview where literally a congressman from our government is telling Tucker Carlson about the entire investigation. But they even know there's so much information that they've done, just like that paper that I have. There's so many things that they did on the fringes that they have thousands and thousands of hours, tens of thousands of hours of information to go through, including all the videos that were recorded inside the Capitol, where they have like 10,000 hours. There's so much information that it takes so long for them to go through. They don't have the time or the money to do it. And so they're literally outsourcing it to the people around the world to look it over, crowdsourcing it, because it's the only way they're going to be able to unravel it all. That's the measure of their resolve. They are so complicated in what they do that they can look at you and go, conspiracy theory, prove it. There's no proof. It's the same thing that the Bidens did when literally the Russian guy was bragging, and this is on the laptop that they claimed it wasn't even real until they're using it in court. And now all of a sudden it's authenticated and real. But from 2016 or 2020, actually in 2019, from 2019 through 2020 up until 2023, that was fake and it was Russian disinformation. And now it's actual fact because it's actually being used in a court case against Hunter Biden. So all of a sudden now it's real and it's authenticated and everything in it is real. So all the stuff that everybody claimed earlier about that same exact laptop is true. But they told you it was a lie and they were making it up until after the election. And now that it's actually been logged into the court case, it's actually, they're saying, oh, it's actually true. All right, hold on. My mother's scratching her leg and I can't let her do that. So hold on, I got to stop her. Wait, she stopped. She starts scratching herself and she'll do that until she bleeds. It's just what she does. Old people get dry skin and they start to do that. So she was going after her leg and I was like, whoops, I'm going to have to go stop her because last week she scratched it until she was bloody. Okay, so I know this might sound insane to you and it might sound like it is literally a conspiracy theory. That's what they tell you it is until somebody actually draws all the lines and shows you this person over here at this time, they were doing this and this is what was being done. And when somebody shows you that throughout the entire history and they start connecting the dots for you, the only thing you can do is you have to look at it and go, I got to look this up because this can't be true. Because if it is, then there is an organization that is the 1% rich people on this earth that have literally been and are controlling every aspect of everyone's life or attempting to at all times. This is what Raw is trying to tell you between 1981 to 1984. This is exactly what Raw is telling you is and has been happening on this earth. If you know, if you've read The Law of One, or if you've listened to anyone who's played it for you, you know this to be true. So it's not just, oh, there's these two people, groups of people, those in service to self and those in service to others, good and evil. Well, that's normal. And that's all that's happening? Of course. And there were these evil people that showed up here and everybody knows them as the Anunnaki. Yeah. It's just like our politicians and they're all related. That's it. It's that simple. That is what you think. That is not the reality. This is why I wrote a book that is called The Reality About Reality, Returning to the Old Ways. Literally in this book, which should be coming out in the next couple of months, it depends on how long we're about ready to get it. I would have gave them permission today, but the buttons didn't work. And I had to email back my publisher and I'll probably have to call them tomorrow because I had to electronically sign saying, yes, I approve the final scope of everything. The editing was already done. The pictures were already done, covers, all the stuff written on them, all of that's done. And then they were like, here's the proof of what we're about to print. Do we have your permission? And I was trying to give them permission today and the buttons didn't work. So I have to give them that. And then it's going to go into production. And then I'll have a date on when the book will be coming out. And in that book, I'm telling you in there and showing you in there this, and not just the politic of it, not the religion of it, of evil, but showing you where in reality the opposite information still is, still there. All the religions are not completely wrong. They're not at all wrong. They've been corrupted. But you pick up a Bible from any religion and it's still in there. The information is still in there. And I'm furthering that with the next book, which I'm already writing, which is going to be, at least at this point, titled Returning to the Old Ways, which is the subtitle of the book that's about to come out. Or it's just going to be called The Old Ways. That is going to show you the correlation of how things were, and that it's there in all the books, in all the tomes, in all the scrolls. It's actually there, and people are overlooking it because they're looking for everything in the flesh. They're looking for, well, they have to find the oldest scroll because it appears that all this information is identical to each other. So they don't think, what if that's just all of those people in history in all of those different places learned the same knowledge and then wrote it down? No one thinks that. They immediately think they had access because they lived in a time, they probably read that scroll, and then they invented their own scroll that sounded just like that scroll. So we have to keep looking, because somewhere out there is an older scroll that we're going to find. Well, what happens when they find that scroll? They're going to keep looking. Well, that's this one, since all the other ones were based on this one was probably based on another one. So instead of looking, they're looking, trying to find the forest, and there's trees in the way, and they're cutting the trees down to find the forest. That's what they're doing. They can't see the forest through the trees. Instead of going, look, it appears, and this is what I'm doing, it appears that every culture on this earth, even though everyone claims they never had any contact with each other, if that's the case, which is what they're all saying in academia, those people didn't meet each other. Okay, let's assume that. Let's just go with that. How then is it that they all came up with the same information? It's the circular argument, because then they go, well, that's because they must have met each other. So a second ago, there's no way that anybody were global, and they were all a bunch of skin-wearing, animal skin-wearing people that were cavemen. They had no contact with each other, except when you question how they all came up with the same information in their religions. Then it was, well, obviously they knew each other, and they all just borrowed the other guy's stuff. So now the same people will have you believe that all cultures knew each other and there were global empires. No. They just went there and found their scroll and brought it back and copied it. Oh, okay. So they were all just cavemen, and somebody went over and learned their language and found a scroll, then ran home and said, look what I found. And they said, good idea. And that's how they all got it. But none of them were intelligent. No, obviously, because they all have the same information. So it must be an older scroll. That's part of the control to keep you looking for the land of milk and honey. So instead of focusing on what it is that's in common to the entire planet throughout all of time, you're looking for another scroll that's older. That is what all theologians do and all historians do. Well, it appears that that part was borrowed from these guys because that one's similar. So obviously that one's older. So now we have to focus on that one and find out where they got it. And that's what they do. They keep looking older and older and older and older in everything for everything. And nobody's studying what all of these people were saying. No one. They're looking for an older one. And those who are studying it are not seeing it in the spiritual sense. And if they are, nobody's correlating this. I haven't found anybody who talks about it or knows it. So I'm doing it because I'm focusing on what if all this information is universal and all of those people independent from one another, or even if they read some of the same stuff, read it and went, that's weird because they say the same thing. And instead of saying, well, that's because they must have borrowed it, unless the people said they borrowed it. Okay. But even then, no one is going, well, what is this that they're saying here? Should we be paying attention to that? No. Let's just keep looking for a new one. That's what they're doing. That's part of the control. Do you see? So this is what my book, The Reality About Reality, Returning to the Old Ways, is about. It's informing you that this information that the Anunnaki, that the Orion Crusaders brought here with them, was how to control all of this, how to create all of this, how to control all of this, and how to make it look like there is no control of all of this. And you can unlock the ability to see all of that. And it becomes very obvious to you, not because you've gone crazy and you're believing a conspiracy theory, because even if you don't want to have anything to do with politics and anything to do with religion, if you are ascending on the side of being in service to others, you will unlock the ability to see that clearly without even knowing anything about politics, without even following religion, without following politics, without any of that crap in your life. You will one day wake up and you'll look around and you'll go, when did this start? When did they start doing this? Does anybody else see this? And most people are going to go, you're crazy. You're one of those conspiracy theorists. No, I don't really care about politics or religion. Don't have anything to do with any of it. Well, now you're pointing it out, so you must be crazy. And then you're going to go, okay, that one doesn't know what's going on. And then you're going to go, You're asleep. You need to wake up. And then you get tired of hearing them ignore you and call you crazy. So you stop doing that. And then you're going to look around. You're going to start asking other people. And what's going to happen is you're going to find that number of people is going to go diminish. And you're going to find that a very small majority of people know it. And they're the people that are at the top. And you're going to go, are you aware that the politicians have been lying to everybody all times, and that every news agency is lying, and that everything on television is a program to program your mind so that you don't really see what's going on? And then other people go, yeah. And you're like, well, shouldn't we do something about that? You can't, because all those people are asleep. You can scream it to the high heavens and no one's going to care what you say. Well, then why should we do anything about it? Well, because we're obligated. Well, but nobody's going to listen. No. They listen when they do, when they're ready. But the amount of people are not going to be everybody at first. The amount of people are going to be 1 and 2 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 1 and 1 and 2 and 4 and 7. And eventually that number grows, because as each individual wakes up, they affect the all. So exponentially that changes. That's like when they said, if you tell 2 friends and they tell 2 friends, right? So you tell 2 people and each one of those tells 2 people. Now those 2 become 4. And now those 4 become 8. And then 16, and then 32, and then it goes on and on. It gets bigger and bigger and bigger. Do you see? So you're obligated when you get there. You can either ignore the whole world and say, fuck it, I'm not going to do anything, and I'm going to live in a cave or by myself. I'm not going to talk to anybody about any of this, and I don't care. Even though every time you look at the news, every time you look at a movie, every time you read a book, every time you see people out talking in the streets or wherever, that you're going to look at them and go, poor children, and then you become Jesus on the cross and you go, God, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And then you're like, and then that'll hit you. So there's your responsibility. Your responsibility at that point is to then try to do something. So then you have to try and figure out and then you realize the way you deal with children is the way you have to deal with everybody on this earth. So the knowledge is there. The religions, all their knowledge are still in their books. But what they're teaching you when you go to their churches has been corrupted and it's limited. They're still trying to teach you that, because only the 1% that control that church has controlled the rest in their curriculum. Everybody else is trying to give you good information. So don't think, because some people think about me that I'm anti-religion. I have 4 titles in 4 different religions. I'm not anti. I'm anti-orthodox corporations. I am very spiritual minded. And I think everybody, so if you grew up as a Christian, read that Bible. Don't just read the stuff they're teaching you every Sunday, because I have the curriculum. Well, it's not right here. It's on my bookcase. I thought I had it out here, but I don't. I have the Bible dictionary sitting here. I don't have the Bible with the curriculum. The curriculum is a 2-year, a 3-year, or a 5-year curriculum. So if you sit long enough in a church every Sunday, you're going to hear the same sermon, but it's so far removed, you're not going to notice it unless you write down what the sermon was about. I can tell you month to month what the sermons are going to be about, approximation, depending on whether it's a 1-year, a 2-year, or a 5-year sermon. And everybody will be doing the same thing. Currently, everything moves to Romans. If you're in a church anywhere in the world and you're a Christian, they're quoting Romans a lot in June. Okay? And all your pastors are quoting Romans to you. Okay? Why is that? Listen to what they're saying. It's all about the same thing. It's about your relationship with the Spirit currently in June. Okay? And it's about, like neither a lender or a borrower be from Shakespeare. It's about the commonsensical things that have to do with, like, for instance, here's one that they talk about where they're saying now, this is part of Romans, where they're saying, people are saying, I'm not worthy. Well, none of us are worthy in the eyes of the Lord. That's from Romans. None of us are worthy in the eyes of God. We all fail in the eyes of God. This is the sermon this week. Last Sunday and this Sunday, this is the sermon. Wherever you are in a church around the world, you're going to hear your pastor say that. And they're going to tell you, open your books to Roman, and I forgot the number. My brother even talked about it. And I was like, yeah, everyone's talking about it. It's the time of the month. It's this Sunday and next Sunday. So literally last Sunday and today's Friday. So, and this Sunday, if you go to church, they're going to be telling you that. It's okay. None of us are beyond stacking up in the eyes of God. And here in Romans, it shows you that. So that literally is the curriculum for this week. How do I know that? I have the book. I've watched church. I'm online and I follow people online. So literally on Sunday, I watched a church on television from Los Angeles, heard him talking about it at the Roman Coliseum in the background, went on Instagram on Sunday night. And guess what? The guy on Instagram on Sunday night was talking about it. All week long, I'm finding all these people on Instagram talking about Romans and talking about how none of us stack up. And then my brother calls me or texts me and shows me a video of his pastor and then says and quotes, and my brother is in theological college, quotes the same exact caption of none of us stack up in here in the book of Romans is where, and I was like, oh my God, my brother is preaching exactly by the curriculum that they're preaching by. Okay. And they always refer to Romans. Why is it that they refer to Romans more than any other part of the Bible in Western Judeo society, in the Western Christianity? Because our governmental systems in the West were set up from Homer's The Republic. Roman a person who was a prophet and a scholar wrote a book of Rome, and the republic that is Rome would be perfect if it were this way, and wrote a book called The Republic. And the people, the forefathers of the United States, took that book and created the United States out of that. And all other non-monarchies around Europe that are not run by kingships had done the same thing. So our society is based on the Roman Empire and Homer's book, The Republic. And your governmental system and the structure of your religion is set up by that structure. So everything runs back to that. That's another reason why everything is done in Latin. Okay. So everything is done in Latin because all the scientists were approved by the church who spoke Latin in all the masses in the United States until 1968. Okay. All of that is the control mechanism going back to the controllers who are Italian, controlling the world from Venice. And then before that, the Greeks. That's why everything is either quoted in Greek or Roman in modern English. Because your modern English, they only acknowledge came out of the Latin language. They don't acknowledge that the other half of it came out of the Viking pantheon. Our vocabulary, our words, and our letters in English are Viking letters. They're not Greek. Greek is eidetic, and they're not Latin. Latin is based on Viking letters. Okay? So they don't want you to know that because the only place they tie to them is when they want to, like the Queen of England claimed that she was a descendant of Beowulf and Thor. So the ruling class of Europe claimed to be Vikings, but they don't want anything to do with the Vikings. They claim that they're actually from the Latin, from Romans. Why? Because that's where their handlers came out of. That's where they actually came out of. But they don't want you to know that. And so they claim because they want everybody in the north to also pay homage to them. So like, oh no, we're actually part of that bloodline. So this is literally what Raw is telling you about in this entire endeavor, is just how intricate and how deep these tentacles of these controllers around the world is, that is so more vast than you can imagine, that it sounds crazy, even when someone puts it down to paper. And that's why I tell you, I'll give you that. You can look at Cassie, who's now in the audience talking. I gave it to her and she was like, dude, where did you get this? I'm like, it was given to me. I didn't make it. I wish I could claim I had the time and the resources to do that. It's insane. So that is showing the timeline of what they've done worldwide and how it's connected to everything else. So this is what's being done blatantly in front of your eyes and in front of your face constantly by those who would have themselves believe that they own you and own this planet. Okay. And most of you out there know them as the Anunnaki, the Orion Crusaders that Ra's warning about. Okay. So Literally, that is what people who are in service to self at the top are actually and have been doing, orchestrating everything, controlling you. Just like electric cars, there's videos out there now that'll tell you the same thing I've been telling you. Why do they want you to have an electric car? Because they're having it run by a computer, and it's a low jack. That's what they call. We have that over here in this country. It's called the low jack. So they want you driving an electric car because they can just push a button on a computer, click, and turn you off. Right now, if they say stay home because there's a lockdown and it's mandated, you can get in your car because they have no control over it and you can drive. And if somebody wants to make money by selling you gas, they'll give it to you and you can keep driving. But if you're in an electric car, they can just turn you off. They can stop you by going, doop. And to prove it, there was a television show that was going on until they started trying to sell electric cars in the United States. There was a TV show where cops had a car that was low jack that you would get in and steal, and they'd leave the doors open with the keys in it, baiting people. It's called bait car, which is illegal. And they did it anyways. And people would jump in the car and steal it, and they would get going. The cops would follow them. And after they got in the car, the cops would turn off the engine and lock the door, and everything was electric, and nobody could get in the car. Do you know why that ended? People like myself started thinking about that, and they were trying to sell you electric cars. Well, guess what is the number one reason right now why people are turning their cars back in, their electric cars? Because there's a 12-volt battery that runs everything in your car, windows, locks, everything. And people are driving their cars, Teslas and other cars, and they're driving them, and the car dies for no apparent reason, and they can't get out of the car. The windows won't roll down because they're all electric, and the locks won't come unlocked, and you can't open the door from the inside because it's all electric, and they're stuck in their car getting on their phone and calling for help. This is happening all across the world right now with electric cars. And it's not because, well, I drove it too long and it died. It's a malfunction that happens that doesn't charge one of the batteries that runs all of that. Or a fuse breaks and it locks you in your car and you're stuck in the car. You got to call LoJack or OnStar or get on your phone and say, please have somebody come over here and either jump the car so I can get out or break a window. This is what's happening, and people don't want the cars. And then, of course, they can't charge them anywhere, right? So they're turning them in. This was on the news. We're just talking about it. I'm not making this up. You can look this up. It's literally all over. And that's why people in Tennessee, I saw this just on the news. All these people from California are moving to Tennessee. So they're trying to sell these electric cars. And so they went to the car dealerships and they're saying, are you guys selling a bunch of those? Well, everybody who comes from California is buying an electric car. So we sell it to them. And more than 80% of the people who buy them are returning them after a few weeks because they can't drive anywhere, because they can't charge them, or the cars break down and they get stuck in the cars and have to call for somebody to come and break the windows out to get them out of the car. So they don't want the vehicles anymore, right? So all the car companies are getting rid of electric cars very fast now, and they're all going to hydrogen. This is going to be the new rollout. I know for a fact that Ford, I know for a fact that all of the European car companies and two of the big three here in the United States. And the Japanese are already doing it. I believe the Brazilians have already started doing it. Most people around the world are already shifting away from the electric and getting into that. And everyone's going to go that way. It doesn't matter what these Democrats say or these progressives say. They're losing all their money on these cars, and they're going to go straight to hydrogen and say, screw it. So now you're going to have this changeover happen in the next 10 years. It's going to ramp up. So what's going to happen? Well, the same rich people are going to control that industry as well, right? But this is what Raw's trying to warn you guys about. It's not just, that's like when people say, what is it that Adam and Eve learned when they ate from the fruit of the tree of life? Oh, they gained the knowledge of good and evil. Oh, that's all. Because they had no idea of good people or evil people prior to that. Well, if they were the only two, they wouldn't know that choice, okay? But that's not exactly what that entire endeavor is about. But let's just assume that there was no good and evil on the earth until Eve ate the fruit, whatever that was. Because some people say it was a berry, some people say it was a grape, and some people say that it was an apple. It doesn't matter. Let's just say that that they ate a fruit, and that was the knowledge. So what did that entail? It was just, there's good and evil. So we have a choice. That's it. Do you think that's all they gained? That's how big that was? They were kicked out of the garden because they ate from the tree of the fruit of life, and now they just know that there's good and evil? And that was it? That was the biggest sin that God could come up with and allowed them to do, by the way? I mean, we can get involved in that. If you put a cookie on the table and tell your 6-year-old 2 kids, I'm leaving now, there's a cookie jar that you can't touch. I'll be really mad if you eat a cookie out of that cookie jar right there. Okay, look, here's the lid. This is how it opens. If you eat a cookie out of that while I'm gone, I'm going to be really mad and I'm going to make you go outside. And then you leave. If you do that, first of all, you pointed out the one thing they couldn't eat from. And then showed them where it was. And then told them the consequences of it. And then you left. Any adult. So God's not an adult. Because if God's an adult, you don't have them even having access to that tree. If that's what the story was truly about, God can just take the tree and put it outside of the garden or put a wall around the tree so they can't even get to it. Can't see it, can't get to it, don't know it's there, out of sight, out of mind. That's not what happened, because that's not what the story is about. If the story was about, here's a tree that you can't eat from, why did God give them that temptation? God created people and made them infallible, so God knew that they were going to eat from that tree. So when God pointed it out, God was setting them up to fail on purpose. It's the only reason that God would do that. If that story is true, the way everybody thinks it is. That means God set them up. Otherwise, why would you go, that's the tree you can't eat from, this one. Don't do it. Don't you eat from this tree while I'm at work, okay? God's supposed to be all-seeing, all-knowing, all-loving, all-caring. How did God not know that they were eating from that tree if God knows everything? Where was God that God didn't see that and that God didn't know about it until God came back and went, what the fuck? Why do I see an apple on the ground that's got a core? Who did that? Now, God doesn't even know who did it. Do you see? That story doesn't make any sense if you believe that God knows everything and loves everybody and all of that. It doesn't make any sense. God's stupid. God has never raised any children, doesn't know how to do it, because any person who ever has raised a child past the age of 1 knows that if you put a cookie on the table and show it to the kids and then walk out of the room, they're going to eat the cookie 100% of the time. Or maybe 99%, because there's that one kid that's going to go, I was told not to do it, don't do it, we're going to get in trouble. 99% of the time, the kids are going to eat that cookie and go, I don't know, as they're wiping off the shit. We make videos about it, joking about it. Who ate my donuts? And everyone's like, I have no idea. And you go over and this guy's got white powder all over his face. He's still got a donut in his mouth. I don't know, man. Hey, guys, who ate his donut? And you laugh, you giggle. That's the same story of eating of the fruit of the tree of life in the Bible. You leave the donuts there and tell no one to eat the donuts. Someone's going to eat the donuts if they're in service to self already. Okay, so that's not what the story meant. So let's get back to the control. So you guys need to realize that the severity of what Ra is trying to tell you in this entire 106 sessions and what that entails of what these controllers do. All right, let's continue with what we're talking about here, because I know I've talked for an hour. More than an hour and a half almost, without playing any more of Ra. So let's get back to Ra and play that. So literally you have to realize this though, right? Yeah, temptation, Rick said. I don't want to get involved in that story right now. I think I'll cover that in my next book of what it actually means. That it doesn't mean any of that. Eating of the tree of life actually is an internalized thing. I'll try to make it as simple as possible. It is an internalized thing, and you're not supposed to eat of the tree of life because that you're in service to self. That's eating from the tree of life. So literally, you're supposed to be not eating from the tree of life until you're enlightened, and then your enlightenment becomes the nurturing from the tree of life. This is where you hear about this in the Bibles, and I'm going to cover this in the book that I'm currently writing. That it says that once you are ascending, then I will allow you to eat of the tree of life. And when you eat that nectar from the tree of life, you will never go be hungry. You will never be thirsty. You will never grow old. You will never die. Jesus said it, Thoth said it, many other people in other religions stated that, including the Vikings, because they all had the tree of life. The Vikings called it Yggdrasil, which means the tree of life. Everyone had the tree of life. I'm writing about that currently for my next book. Part of the correlation between all of these people. And you can either take all of this information and say, well, it's because they all copied from one another because they weren't really cavemen and they found the scrolls and they just copied from one another. So we still have to go and try and find that one scroll that's the oldest one. People have been looking for that one older scroll for the last 150,000 years, and they just keep finding another scroll and another scroll and another scroll and another scroll and another scroll, and it's a different society and an older society and an older society. And, well, then maybe they just handed it down. Well, here's the thing you're not getting. The thing you're not getting is that the knowledge is only superficially changing. That's why I'm writing my second book. The story of the Christ, whether you believe Jesus was invented or not, happened 12 times on this earth. All 12 times they were almost identical. Most of them walked on water. Most of them turned water into wine. Most of them made the blind see. Most of them brought the dead back from the grave. All of the miracles that Jesus did happened 11 times prior, identically, on this earth in 11 different countries, in 11 different times, dating back 100,000 years. That story didn't change at all. The same is true for the concept of the Christ, the Christos. Okay, not named Jesus, but the Christ, the Savior. That concept only changed superficially to fit the religion of the time, whether it was a monotheistic, that means single, God or goddess, a dual aspect God, goddess, or a trinity, Father, Mother, Son, Father, Mother, Daughter. So it was either the Trinity. The Vikings were the Trinity, Father, Mother, Odin, Freya, Thor. Jesus, that religion was a monotheistic, male-dominated Hebrew religion, so there was no female goddess. So you had God and his son born of a virgin mother. She was human, God was God, and the Trinity is God, Son, together as one, no feminine. It's a male-dominated religion. Okay? So the Hebrew religion, the Christian religion, and the Muslim religion are all based on a single masculine God. Not dual aspect, no feminine involved in that. It's a warlike cultures. Those three are warlike cultures. That's why they've been warring with each other in some aspect for the last 5, 6, 7, 8,000 years. Because they're warlike countries, because they're a masculine, male-dominated religion. Anybody that knows anything about theology understands that. And then when you have a feminine, if she's a masculine character in feminine, it's still the same warlike. And then if you have the dual aspect, like the Vikings, they have that warlike capacity, but they also have the other aspect that you don't get to learn about because the warlike cultures only venerate the war part of the Viking religion. Thor and Odin. You don't hear much about Freya at all. Or Hel, Thor's sister. You don't hear anything about that. Or you hear about Loki because Loki's a man. No one even knows that there was a girl who was the oldest of the three people who were the children. Oh, and then Loki was adopted. But you don't get to hear about that unless you learn the religion, and then you find out that the oldest member of that family was a female. No, they can't have that because the warlike cultures that are a male-dominated religion don't want you to see her as strong and stronger than Thor, wiser than Thor. She was also evil, right? But she wasn't completely. So there, she was more of a dual aspect, but you should learn the religion to find that out. So then when you get into some of the Eastern religions of the older ones, like Marduk was a sub-god. He was the grandson of Tiamat. Tiamat was the queen of the gods, but she was the most evil one. Why was she evil? She was evil because her three sons, murdered her husband because her husband was mad at them because they were partying all night and he couldn't sleep. Weird that gods need to sleep, by the way. right? So don't even ask that question of why that was going on, because they weren't human, they were gods. He was trying to sleep, and the kids were partying too much and drinking alcohol and being loud and eating food and being boisterous, sounds like Vikings. And he said, I'm going to have to kill our sons because they won't listen to me. So mom, Tiamat, went to the sons and said, you guys need to shut up or dad's going to kill you. What do you mean dad's going to kill us? He said he's going to kill you. He's going to have to because you're not listening to him. So then they said, well, fuck that. And we're going to need to go kill him. They didn't tell mom that. And they went and killed their father. Mom, who loved her husband, was insane now with rage and anger because her sons murdered her husband. And she blamed herself. Now she went after her sons because how dare they kill her husband? And now she's evil because she's revenging her husband who they murdered and going after her own sons and kills them. Now all of the humans, knowing this information, call her evil now. And they start marching on her with armies to kill her, and nobody can face her, but her grandson shows up, Marduk, and Marduk's able to kill her, murders his mother now, who was avenging her husband's death because her sons murdered her husband, and now he's the savior of the universe for doing so. That doesn't make any sense if they're gods, first of all. That means they're not supposed to be able to die. So now we're supposed to believe gods can die. So they're not really gods. Same thing with Thor and Odin. If you listen to the stories of like Ragnarok in the movies, Odin dies. Wait a minute. He's a god. If he's a god, he's not supposed to be able to die. How come he can die then? Because he's not a god. So the story isn't what you think it is at all. It's something else. I'm going to talk about that in my next book. Okay. So let's get back onto what's going on currently, and we'll go forward and we'll get some more of the Law of One in today. Okay. So Dawn's asking the question about control by good and evil when it comes to being able to travel and the different sources of doing that. And Ra's explaining how that works and has explained that when you get to the sixth density, that evil people stop traveling because they're in fact confused with what's going on because they can't ascend anymore. And so they get very confused and they don't do much traveling. That starts in the fifth dimension. And then halfway through the sixth. So it continues in that other people are then ascending more on the side of being in service to others. So, but the control mechanism going from this place where you're first aware up to that is everything that I'm talking about and have been talking about for the last hour and a half that Ra's been warning is what happens in this place. And it's not just in the third dimension. It's in the third dimension, the fourth dimension, and partway into the fifth dimension. That's the temporal war that Ra talks about, but couldn't outright say like I'm saying now back in 1981 to 1984. Because the population of this earth was nowhere near ready to hear the words temporal war and understanding that temporal means literally cross dimension and time, not just space, but time. Okay. And this is why I'm interpreting things now. We're in 2024. That's a long time from 1981. And think about if you were alive in 1981 and older than the age of 10, you had a pretty good idea of society on this earth. They would have never accepted me saying those words back then. Back then, my father was saying you can't talk about the first rule in Fight Club is you can't talk about Fight Club. Okay. That was told to me in the 70s going into the 80s. Well, I was in my 20s by the time the 80s happened. 1987, I was 20. So I was a late teens when these books came out, but I never knew them. Even if I had, I would have been able to tell you, oh, wow, the same thing I'm telling you now. There's no way they could tell you that back then. No way they could give you this kind of information. Okay. So, and then you guys are talking now in amongst yourselves. You probably don't want me to. Hi, Kari. Finally, I saw you there. And then I looked up and saw that you had said hi. Hi. All right. So let's play what Ra is saying, talking about this now and the control mechanisms and the traveling and how that's working. And we'll go into the next question.
Instead, we appreciate and recommend the use of your second verb in regard to the use of the will. Acceptance of self, forgiveness of self, and the direction of the will. This is the path towards the disciplined personality. Your faculty of will is that which is powerful within you as co-creator. You cannot ascribe to this faculty too much importance. Thus it must be carefully used and directed in service to others for those upon the positively oriented path. There is great danger in the use of the will as the personality becomes stronger, for it may be used even subconsciously in ways reducing the polarity of the entity. 52.8 Questioner, I sense, possibly, a connection between what you just said and why so many wanderers have selected harvest time on this planet to incarnate. Am I correct? This is a vague notion. Ra, I am Ra. It is correct that in the chance to remember that which has been lost in the forgetting there is an immunity of opportunity for positive polarization. We believe this is the specific thrust of your query. Please ask further if it is not. 52.9 Questioner, well, I would just include the question as to why time of harvest is selected by so many wanderers as time for incarnation? Ra, I am Ra. There are several reasons for incarnation during harvest. They may be divided by the terms self and other self. The overriding reason for the offering of these brothers and sisters of sorrow in incarnative states is the possibility of aiding other selves by the lightening of the planetary consciousness distortions and the probability of offering catalyst to other selves which will increase the harvest.
Now, know that if you guys have read Thoth, Thoth refers to the Sisters of Sorrow as well. Just pointing out, right? Because I literally just read Thoth 2 weeks ago now. Read the Emerald Tablets over, and I was literally writing about it and reading about it today. Not that part, though, but that's also mentioned in there. Note to file, the names in Thoth's Emerald Tablets, literally for the chakras in the Emerald Tablets, the names of the chakras, starting with the base red ray root chakra. It's the only place I've seen, not the only place I've seen this, but there's only 2 places in 2 different scrolls that I've seen this. And the second I read it, I realized how accurate it was. And I've been telling everybody about it because everyone thinks that we have 7 chakras. So therefore the red ray root chakra is number 1. And then the crown chakra is number 7. There's 7 of them, but it's not actually that numerology. Okay. The nature of nature in the universe, our chakras mirror as below, so above, as within, so without the universe. Okay. So the way it works in reality, and I want you to listen very carefully. Some of you I've already told this to, and you're like, what? If you know what the chakras are and what they represent, if you've ever read the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, you know this, and I'm going to have to read the scrolls again from the Dead Sea and find out which one was a reference in there, because there was one in there. And I think even the Hermetica, because I think Hermes knew it, because Hermes was the statue of Hermes they buried. That's where they found the Emerald Tablets, by the way, was at the base of underneath the ground, at the base of the statue of Hermes. So Hermes had and owned that book, and they buried it with his statue, the Emerald Tablets of Thoth. So Hermes knew it. So Hermes had written, and I think also mentioned it, so that might be 3 places on the earth, that the names of the chakras that govern the universe and the human condition are 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. This places the red ray root chakra as 3. If the red ray root chakra is 3, then the heart chakra becomes 6. And the crown chakra becomes 9, that which controls all of them. 3, 6, and 9. The governing bodies of the universe mathematically, 3, 6, and 9. I just was writing about this particular part. In fact, somebody was translating the charm of making, and they were saying it can't be Irish because this is what it means in Irish. And I'm like, that's what it means. You're not translating the intention, because they said the first word, right, Anal Nathrak, means breath of the dragon. And I'm like, yes. What is the dragon? Don't you know anything about the druids and listen to the Merlin? The dragon is in everything. So the dragon's breath of the dragon, the serpent, the dragon of the North Sea, the dragon, the beast. 666, the number of the beast. 666 is the building block. 6 atoms, 6 protons, 6 neutrons. The building block, 6 carbon atoms, 6 protons, 6 neutrons. That is what is this reality, the building blocks of this reality, the building blocks of us humans. That which governs the entire nature of nature is 666, the number of the beast. Let him who hath understanding reckon the number of the beast. For it is a human number. That's a mistranslation. The actual translation from the ancient Hebrew, which came from the Sanskrit, is not, and it's still this way in the Hebrew Bible. It is not. It does not say, for it is a human number. It says, for it is a number of man. Meaning, it is the building blocks that make up the human condition, the beast. So, breath of the dragon, and al-Nathrach, means the beast, the nature of the beast. So when they were trying to say it can't be, we have no idea what it means, but that word means the nature, means the breath of the serpent, the breath of the dragon. I'm like, that's exactly what it means. It means the beast, the nature of nature. I've translated those words to you into modern English. All that is nature, the nature of nature. 3. Pythagorean theorem knows this. 3 plus 3 is 6. So my 3, or me calling to nature the beast, and my intention being the other 3, makes 6. So I'm not going to go into what he said. It's in my new book that will be out in a couple years. In the translation into Irish, and I'm like, it actually means that is what you're missing is the intention and what that actually means. You have to remember that they're also trying to be esoteric, so you don't actually understand what they're saying. So if they're saying it in Irish, saying these words, Anal Nathrach Uthvas Faith Doth Hiel Dienve, which is in the Welsh is much prettier sounding. It flows so much better. I'll have to go back and watch the video where that 33rd degree Freemason, Master Mason, said it in the Welsh. And I was like, oh my God, I've never heard it in the Welsh. And he was, oh my God, it gave me chills how beautiful it sounds in the Welsh. I'll have to go back and memorize how to say that in the Welsh. Very similar, but it's a little bit different. Like the Dothiel is Dothiel, Dien way. So I'm trying to say it in the Welsh now from memory, right? So instead of hard, the way we Americans say it, the Irish say it a little bit harder than the Welsh. Instead of Anal Nathrach, it was Anal Nathre, Uthwa, Spehod, Uthwa, Spehod. No, so it's Anal Nathrach, Uthwa, Spehod, Dothsiel, Dien way. That's the Welsh. I'm not really, he said it just as a matter of fact, as quickly as I say, Anal Nathrach, Uthva, Spehod, Dothiel, Dien, which is a modern, a little bit more, it's ancient, Middle Irish with my English accent, with my English accent. Okay. So those of you who know the charm of making, you either know it in the Welsh or you know it in the like Spanglish, the Irish or I English, the way that I'm saying it, which is a Middle Irish, Englandized Middle Irish, not modern Irish. But it still means the same words when you write them down, right? Thank you, Kari. You know it probably in the Irish, right? You probably know it the same way I know it in the Irish because it's hardly spoken in the Welsh anymore. And I was surprised not surprised, but surprised that he knew it, but not surprised that a 33rd degree Master Mason knew it in the Welsh. And I said to him, could you say it again? And my ex-wife was hosting with me, and she also knew it in the Irish. And I'm getting chills talking about it. And she's like, wait a minute, can you say that one more time? And we made him say it 3 times on air, and it's recorded. And you can go back in the archives to Earth Day 2021 or 2022, Earth Day. I'll have to go back and find it. And then I'll record that clip and play it for you guys next week if I can remember to stay away from doing my book long enough to do the research. And I'll play it for you guys, and you can hear him say it in the Welsh. So I say it slow and you'll hear him rattle it off as fast as I do. But in the Irish, it's Anal Nathrach Uthvas Spethod Dothiel Dienve. And it was spoken in English. So that's where you have the hard consonants at the end of the words. Anal Nathrach and it's all now Nothray in the Welsh. Uth was spathon, uth wa, and there's no V sound. It's a W. Uth wa spatho. Or spato, because there's no th in the Irish or the Welsh, so it's uthwa spato docile, not dochiel, docile dienwe. That's the Welsh, and so in the modern way of saying the Irish with an American accent or English accent, you get the hard K and th and thud and stuff in it, but it still means the same words when you write them down. And I show them in my next book. I actually take the words the way they're written in the Old Irish, and he translates it into the modern Irish and says that doesn't make any sense. And I'm like, he's not a Druid. He's not a Merlin if he is a Druid, because as soon as I saw it, I was like, oh, that's beautiful, bro. You're actually translating the words, but missing the actual intention of what he's trying to say. Yes, it means, literal word means breath of the dragon or dragon's breath. And that's where literally, if you watch the old movie from 1982 with Patrick Stewart when he was in his late 20s, early 30s at the time, in 1982, before he was on Star Trek and had that whole pantheon going. He's a Shakespearean actor, and all the actors. It was made in Ireland by the English and the Irish, that movie called Excalibur in 1982. And if you were alive in Europe at the time, you know everybody that was in those movies. They're all stars. They were all movie stars over there, actors and television actors that got all those parts. America was introduced to all of them for the first time when that movie hit the United States. And in there, he was teaching from the book, the 18 and 21 Lessons of Merlin, about the dragon. And if you saw the whole dragon all at once, it would burn you into cinders. And his eyes glow red when he actually uses the charm of making to try and entrap Arthur's sister, and she steals the charm of making from him and entraps him. But his eyes glow red when he turns around and he says the charm of making, and he says, "I banish you into oblivion," and they turn bright red, glowing. He was channeling the dragon and seeing her through the eyes of the dragon. And he was explaining in there in all of the traditions of becoming a Merlin, which is what he was teaching Arthur, was to be a Druid and become a Merlin. He was teaching him that the dragon is everything. It's the beast. And they didn't translate it into the intention that he would really be telling him in real life. They left it with the dragon's breath, and that it was the dragon, and used that euphemism because even in 1981, they were still trying to keep control, the Druids and the Merlins, of this information, because they were afraid still, thinking people could use it for their advantage if it was evil. You can't use it. It's high magic. It's magic with a K. If you're evil, you cannot have access to that. You can only gain some superficial things, which she used to keep herself young and to seduce her brother, to gain the heirs to the throne through the bloodline of having sex with her brother and getting pregnant and having his son. And that's the story. It didn't happen in real life, but it's the story that is part of it. And some say it did kind of happen that way. Okay. So that entire endeavor is the charm of making. That's 369. Let me go back to that. That's 369. So your chakras are not 1 through 7. They're 369, 3 through 9. Red ray, base root chakra. This 3D reality is 3. Your heart chakra is 6. Your crown chakra, the illumination of your spirit and soul, is 9. The controlling, the hex boson, the logos, controlling mechanism of this place. That is, I am a druid. I am a Merlin. I have that title. I didn't go and spend a couple of years getting the title. I started as soon as my father realized that I was gifted when I was 3 or 4 or 5 years old, and I went until just before he died when I was 19 years of age, and then I was given that title. I don't have a piece of paper. There's people who go, what method did you? I was taught in the ancient Celtic method of druidry from my father, who was a Merlin, who bestowed upon me the title of Merlin. Anybody who is a druid who wants to say, well, you don't have a piece of paper. Okay, so where did you get yours from? Because let's go back far enough. When you get back about 150 years from now, There's not going to be a piece of paper for any druid and anyone who had the title of Merlin going back to the beginning of time. So then what good is your piece of paper today? You either know it or you don't. I'm not trying to charge people money to teach them to be a druid because I was taught the old-fashioned way. I may never teach anyone that what I know and pass it on to them. I'm going to try and give it to all of you. Same thing that Christopher Penzick did with Reiki, when Reiki was protected and you couldn't show anybody any of the symbols throughout all of time. And then back in the 90s, he blew the lid off that and published them in the book. That's why you can find them online today. Because Christopher Penzick put them in his book, and they ended up all over the world. And everybody knows what you can look up until Christopher Penzick did that. You will not find any Reiki symbols in history. And he printed them, and I remember when he did it. And I was like, whoa, he's blowing the lid off the universe. Never got credit for it. But he was the very first person, and it was huge in the late 80s, early 90s, that he did that. Huge on this world to all people of Reiki. They were outing him. They were trying to say he was evil, and he was not. But he realized, look, the world needs to have these. It's not something that everyone can just keep and hide, because that's what everybody does with everything, control. And he said everyone should have access to all of these because it's going to activate some people and motivate them to want to use these for good. And that's exactly what happened. And now, going back to just 5-6 years ago, people were starting to attune people without being in their proximity to give them attunements for Reiki. And I had it done to me to find out, because people were questioning, what do you think about this where they can attune you from 1,000 miles away? Like, why couldn't you? You can heal somebody. You don't have to be in proximity with them. You guys are supposed to expand your consciousness to the ideas. This is what progression and expansion is when you're growing, is to not hold to these traditions for thousands of years and never change anything. None of them were designed to be this way. None of them were designed to be a religion, and religion closes the box, controls it, and says you only get to know what we teach you because our way is the right way. And you'll get all crazy and make all your shit up. And you'll just go off half-cocked and not know what you're talking about if you don't have us leading you. And that's stifling people. And that's what they did with Reiki for 100 years. That's what they do with everything. And there are people who are breaking down the boundaries. I'm one of them. This is why I'm writing that book. This is why this book is about to come out. As soon as I can get a hold of my publisher again, because they sent me 2 emails to electronically sign saying, yes, get that into print. And neither one of their buttons worked. So now I had sent them an email, and tomorrow I'll have to call them and go, where do you guys send me another one? The link's not working. Okay. So send me another one and I can approve this and we can get it printed. And the second book that I'm writing and the stuff I'm talking about. Raw was trying to do the same thing between 1981 and 1984 with the information that Raw could get out to the world. And again, it's esoteric. This is why I translate it. And this is why I'm writing my book. Not just because of that. I was already writing this stuff because of everything that I knew. And then I find the Law of One in 2017. And people are like, dude, you're talking about the Law of One. I'm like, I don't even know what that is. I know what the universal laws are. And they're like, that's the Law of One. I'm like, huh? Okay, here. I had already learned about that. One of the biggest problems the CIA had, whether they want to admit to you and the government wants to admit that they were talking to aliens or not, I know that they were, and that some of the aliens were evil and some were not. And the ones that were not evil wanted to talk about spirituality. And they were just trying to get technology and weapons and spaceships out of them. And these guys didn't want to talk about those things. They wanted to talk about spirituality. And they talked about the one. Talked about the one. And these aliens in 1948 were talking about the laws of the one and the laws that govern the universe. I learned about that when I was probably 18 or 19 years old. I had access to that stuff. And I was reading that going, really? They were talking about spirituality, and it was driving the CIA absolutely bonkers in the military, the Army and the Air Force, driving them nuts because they didn't care about spirituality. They wanted money. They wanted power. They wanted guns. They wanted spaceships. They wanted technology, man. So we don't care about your spirituality. And the guys were just laughing at them, and I'm not going to give you any of that. And the evil people, those were even harder to deal with. The evil ones were just killing humans for no apparent reason, using their mind and drop dead and laughing about it. So they had to kill those ones. So when the evil ones were, because they had exchange students, they had to kill the evil ones because they kept killing everybody. And then the other ones that got here wouldn't give them any of the technology that they wanted. And they were talking about spirituality. And they wanted to talk about that. So I was interested in what they had to say. I don't care about technology either. Yeah, okay. I know there's aliens. I know there's technology. I don't care about what they're going to tell us. What's the spirituality that they're talking about that's out there in the universe? That's what I wanted to know. So I focused on that and went down those roads, and I was finding all of this information was even the same to aliens that we unlock here. So when I started talking about it in 2016, 2017, people were like, have you ever read The Law of One? They talk about that in there. And I'm like, I don't even know what you're talking about. Never heard of it. So then I read it. That was the first time I went through the 106 sessions. And now I'm doing it again because of that. Because now I can tell you more things that I couldn't tell you in 2017, 2018, 2019. Couldn't give you some of the information that I'm giving you now because no one was ready for it. When I started talking like this, even in 2017, people would just shut me down. You're crazy. Some of you think that now, not you guys that are listening to me now, because you would have already gone. Me talking for 30 seconds, you'd be like, crazy, out of here. So if you're still here, there's a reason. Okay. So they're trying to warn you of this modus operandi. I'm trying to expand your horizons and illuminate your soul by saying, understand the depth of the control that they actually have. That's why I call them the controllers, because if I name them like I'm doing on my show, in my book, it won't get published. The editors will be like, he can't publish that. Okay. I already had to talk with the editor, as a matter of fact, and we agreed to get away from that because the editor was like, you're gonna have problems. If you use Anunnaki over and over, you're gonna have problems. And I'm like, well, what should I use then? Let's talk about what can get by there. If you say the controllers, you're not pointing out anybody, so you're not going to have the Bilderbergers come after you or these people. They still might, but there's still plausible deniability by saying the controllers. So when you read my book, you're not going to hear Anunnaki. You're not going to hear Orion Crusaders. You're going to hear the controllers, okay? Because that's the word that I can use so that they won't just flat say, nope, not publishing that book. But the information that I'm giving also has to be more of a spiritual way because they don't care about that. Most people don't believe it anyways. Most people already have their minds made up when it comes to spirituality or religion or politics. So they don't care about that so much. And that's how those of us in the think tank realized that the way to get around the controllers, the Anunnaki, the Orion Crusaders, is by teaching spirituality to the people. And don't try to discount and say the religions are wrong because they're not. They're just being controlled like everything else. They're not wrong. And literally, I read to you a passage from the Bible, from the Hebrew Bible. Let me go back here and read it to you again for those of you who showed up late. That was sent to me by Stephanie earlier today as I was about to go online here for the show. She sent me this where she highlighted it. I don't know exactly what. I just know that it's verse 22 and verse 23, and I'll have to ask her exactly what it's from. But here I'm reading it to you right off of the picture that she gave me. But it doesn't say what it's from, so I'm not sure. But it's right out of the Bible. Okay, and so verse 22: the lamp of the body is the eye. Third eye. The lamp of the body is the eye. If your eye is sound, your whole body will be filled with light. Verse 23. But if your eye is bad, your whole body will be in darkness. And if the light in you is darkness, how great will the darkness be? That comes from the Hebrew Bible. I think it's Old Testament. I didn't ask her, but it smacks of Old Testament. I know that I do not believe from my memory that is in the New Testament. Okay. Know that I am a minister. Okay. No, and I don't have the Bible sitting here in front of me. But I have the Bible dictionary. The Bible is over there and over there. We have like 4 of them around the house. 5. There's one sitting right next to my mother, as a matter of fact. 2 next to my mother. A small one, travel size, and a big one. And then I have 2 in my bedroom. I used to have one from every religion. So that smacks of the Old Testament. I'm going to ask her what that's exactly is from, but I know it's from the Bible because we talked about that right after that. And she says, and people say that the Bible doesn't talk about spirituality, and there it is. So she's doing research somewhere, and she found that. And so she sent it to me, but didn't tell me what passage it was from. I bet if I said that to my brother, he would tell me because he's in theological college today. Okay. I did my intern a long time ago. I got my minister license in 2016 and we're in 2024. Okay. And so you don't use it, you lose some of it. But my brain is saying it's probably Romans. It's probably somewhere in Romans because that's what they're talking about in all the churches for the next last week, this week, and I think the week after they're going on all of that. Okay, so right, yeah, Peter says that comes from the Old Testament. Thank you, Peter. I'm pretty sure you're right. Pretty sure that's from the Old Testament. It comes from the Old Testament, Peter said. And Peter, like me, is another theologian, scholar of the religions. So I'm sure it smacks of that, right, Peter? I agree with you. Peter's over in Ireland, and he knows more about I think he knows more than I do, and I have titles. He's one of my theological scholars that I refer to. So thank you, Peter. I agree. It's in the Old Testament somewhere. I don't know exactly where, but I know that it is. I agree with that. When I read it, I'm like, that's old. It sounds like smacks of Old Testament. Okay, so literally, there's just 2 verses, 22 and 23, that is literally talking about your third eye, right? And at first, when I read the lamp of the soul, because the Greeks referred to we call the heart this pump that's here, okay? And back 5,000 years ago on this planet, nobody referred to this as the heart. The heart was your third eye. The heart was your third eye. That was called the heart. This was called the blood pump, okay? This was called the pump of the body pump. It was not called the heart. Somewhere it got moved from your third eye being the heart of the soul to the heart of your body. Somewhere the controllers changed that from the third eye to this pump, because this was called the pumping mechanism by everybody 5,000 years ago. This was not called the heart. The heart was the third eye. So in that passage, and that's why I agree with Peter that it comes right out. That's also in the book of Kells. I believe that too. Okay, I believe that it is also in the book of Kells. So literally, let me go back and look at that again, right? Because the first thing I recognized was that when it was saying the lamp, because the heart, our word heart comes from the ancient Greek word of illumination, lamp. Okay. So the lamp of the body is the eye. That that has to be Old Testament because its origin, worded that way, is 3,000 to 5,000 years old. So that it wouldn't have been in the New Testament because the New Testament was written between the year 100 and the year 400 AD. I'm talking about the year at least 2500 BC back to 4500 BC is when that was written. So for that to be worded as the lamp of the body is the eye, okay? The lamp of the body, the illumination of the body is the eye, singular, meaning third eye. So that right there is esoteric as well, but the worded that way is a Sanskrit, I believe. That's why I agree with Peter. I believe that's the Sanskrit translation of illumination, lamp, because the technology of oil lamps was definitely Mesopotamian, forward Sanskrit, Farsi or Yiddish, Hebrew, and down from there until the technology changed to where now we have this. And now if you're English, you know that you still refer to them as torches, right? We over here call it a flashlight because the military used it to flash symbols, the Morse code back and forth. So we call it a flashlight, whereas in England it's still called a torch. Torch, something you burn, walk around with, still called a torch. And you go further east, is my point, and they call it a lamp because of the oil lamps for thousands of years that they used. So that's why when I saw that I recognized how far back that was. This is what us nerdy theologians do. When we read Bibles, you get an idea of timeline and culture. So the Greeks which were part of that same Eastern culture. Arcadia, which was next to Mesopotamia, came from the Greek city-state of Arcadia. Okay, so they were Greeks. People aren't aware of that, but you can look that up. So in that same time period, the technology they would have had was lamps. So they referred to the illumination, the light of your illumination of your third eye as the lamp. And that word that came from their word for lamp is where we get the word heart from. That's where we get the word hearth from, which means fireplace, the hearth of the house. That's where we get the word heart from. The light of the house is the hearth. So the word was hearth, the heart, the hearth. And that would be a Greek translation. The Middle Eastern translation, Arabic, going back to Hebrew, going back to Sanskrit, going back to Mesopotamia, would be lamp, meaning the same thing. Lamplight. Do you see? So I agree that Peter, his instincts were immediate. That's from the Old Testament. Agreed. 100%. Came out of the Hebrew Old Testament, not the Old Testament modern version in the modern Christianity, because the Hebrews it'll drive them crazy if you try to compare that what we call the Old Testament currently their Talmud. It's similar, but it's been worked, and it drives them crazy how things have changed, and it's not exactly what their Bible is. But it's based on that. We claim that is what it is. It's not. Okay. Right, Penny says 37 minutes, 9 p.m. when I go home. You must be at work or at somebody's house. Okay. So, and me too. I got to leave soon anyway. It's like almost 5:30. All right. So let's get some more of this session in, right? But I just wanted to get involved in that. And some people probably left by now because now he's talking religion. He's not even talking about the law of one. For those people who are purist and they have to hear the law of one spoken, go and turn it on. Go over to YouTube and punch it in and turn it on. And you can just listen to what Ra is saying and translate it yourself. All right, let's continue.
There are two other reasons for choosing this service which have to do with the self. The wanderer, if it remembers and dedicates itself to service, will polarize much more rapidly than is possible in the far more etiolated realms of higher density catalyst. The final reason is within the mind/body/spirit totality or the social memory complex totality, which may judge that an entity or members of a societal entity can make use of third density catalyst to recapitulate a learning/teaching which is adjudged to be less than perfectly balanced. This especially applies to those entering into and proceeding through sixth density, wherein the balance between compassion and wisdom is perfected. 52.10 Questioner, thank you. Just as something that I am a little inquisitive about, not much importance, but I'd like to make a statement I intuitively see, which may be wrong. You were speaking of the slingshot effect, and that term has puzzled me. The only thing I can see is that you must put energy into the craft until it approaches the velocity of light, and this of course requires more and more and more energy. The time dilation occurs, and it seems to me that it would be possible to, by moving at 90 degrees to the direction of travel, somehow change this stored energy in its application of direction or sense so that you move out of space/time into time/space with a 90 degrees deflection. Then the energy would be taken out in time/space and you would re-enter space/time at the end of this energy reversal. Am I in any way correct on this? Ra, I am Ra. You are quite correct as far as your language may take you, and, due to your training, more able than we to express the concept. Our only correction, if you will, would be to suggest that the 90 degrees of which you speak are an angle which may best be understood as a portion of a tesseract. 52.11 Questioner, thank you. Just a little point that was bothering me of no real importance. Well, is there then, from the point of view of an individual who wishes to follow the service to others path from our present position in third density, is there anything of importance other than disciplines of personality, knowledge of self, and strengthening of will? Ra, I am Ra. This is technique. This is not the heart. Let us examine the heart of evolution. Let us remember that we are all one. This is the great learning/teaching. In this unity lies love. This is a great learn/teaching. In this unity lies light. This is the fundamental teaching of all planes of existence in materialization. Unity, love, light, and joy. This is the heart of evolution of the spirit. The second ranking lessons are learned/taught in meditation and in service. At some point the mind/body/spirit complex is so smoothly activated and balanced by these central thoughts or distortions that the techniques you have mentioned become quite significant. However, the universe, its mystery unbroken, is one. Always begin and end in the creator, not in technique. 52.12 Questioner.
Okay, before we get to the last, because we only got a minute left, so we'll finish this. I wanted to explain, right? I pulled it up to make sure that I was explaining it properly. A tesseract, okay? And that's spelled Tesseract. Tesseract, okay? A tesseract is, I'm going to read it right off of Wikipedia, right? In geometry, a tesseract or 4 cube is a 4-dimensional hypercube analogous to a 2-dimensional square and a 3-dimensional cube. So take a square, right? A 3-dimensional or 4-dimensional square, not just a square, but showing all the dimensions, okay? And then extrapolate out from that. So you have the first part, and then you extrapolate out from that. So it goes from the 3-dimensional or 4-dimensional cube, which is also showing you 2 dimensions, 3 dimensions involved in it. So you have a square within a square, and then you have everything connected going from the outside points to the inside points. Do you understand that? I don't know if I'm explaining that well enough for you to understand. So what he's saying is that Ra's explaining that that Dawn was correct, and Dawn didn't question it because Dawn understood the tesseract. It's a 4-dimensional particle, which is to view it as a 5-dimensional operation, because you have to be separate from it and be able to observe it in 3-dimensional space. And it's occupying 3-dimensional space, but visually it's showing you a 4-dimensional item. Okay, so that becomes 5-dimensional because the only way that you can perceive it in a 3rd-dimensional world is to perceive it internalized in your mind, to expand your consciousness past the 2-dimensional or 3-dimensional rendering to make it to see the 4 dimensions of it. This is really hard to explain. So if you don't already know the math, then this is hard to explain. Right, so I just read you what they say it is, but now I'm trying to describe it without showing you the picture on the screen. I don't know if I can share my screen to show that. I'll have to unshare this. So let's finish the last minute and a half of this, and then I'll see if I can share that screen to the screen here. Because if I have to unshare this media player to share that. So let's finish this, and then I'll share the screen and I'll show you the image of it. Okay, guys?
Thank you. In mentioning, in the previous session, the harvest, you mentioned the light bringers from the octave. Am I to understand that those who provide the light for the gradation of graduation are of an octave above the one we experience? Could you tell me more about these light bringers, who they are, etc.? Ra, I am Ra. This will be the last full query of this working. This octave density of which we have spoken is both omega and alpha, the spiritual mass of the infinite universes becoming one central sun or creator once again. Then is born a new universe, a new infinity, a new logos which incorporates all that the creator has experienced of itself. In this new octave there are also those who wander. We know very little across the boundary of octave except that these beings come to aid our octave in its logos completion. Is there any brief query which you have at this time? 52.13 Questioner. Only, is there anything that we can do to make the instrument more comfortable or to improve the contact? Ra, I am Ra. This instrument has some distortion in the area of the lungs which has been well compensated for by the position of the physical complex. All is well. We leave you, my friends, in the love and in the light of the one infinite creator. Go forth, therefore, rejoicing in the power and in the peace of the one infinite creator. Adonai.
Okay, so now let's see if I can share my screen and show you guys that image. I don't know if it's going to allow me to do that. No, it's actually showing. Maybe if let me see what you guys are seeing up here. Let me share this and see what happens. I don't think it's going to allow that. Wait, here we go. There we go. Let's share that. Let me see what you guys are seeing here. Okay, so let me put this up in the full screen. Can you guys see that image there on the screen that says Tesseract 8 cell 4 cube? Okay, that, I don't think I can pull that up any more than that. I would have to zoom in. I don't think I can do that. Yeah, so you guys have to look on your screen there. That's as big as I can make it, unless I can do it over here. And I don't think I can over here. I don't think I can pull it up because it's not a regular image. It's from the internet. So you guys can see it there. That's a Tesseract, okay? So that's kind of a, if you look, it's a cube within a cube, and everything is connected. So it's trying to be a 4-dimensional rendering of a 3rd-dimensional image, because it's actually a 2-dimensional image because it's a picture of it. Right, so that's the best we can do in this world on a 2-dimensional scale, because it's flat, and we're trying to give you the depth of this 3rd-dimensional 4th-dimensional image, and then it becomes 5th-dimensional when you're observing it. So your observing becomes the 5th-dimensional characteristic of that image. And so what he was saying is that the 90 degrees is one angle of the Tesseract. So when he was saying that using this information to do the slingshot from one place to another to travel is moving, say, if you looked at that image, using your information to go from the inner cube to the outer cube, going at 190-degree angle. So you're coming at one direction and then going back at another direction, or going like this, from the T, one to the other, or inside one to the other, instead of the outside square or the up and down square going in. Is one of those angles going down, utilizing and piggybacking on that geometric shape, or the energy of that geometric shape, to move from one place to another. This is what science isn't learning. And in fact, this is why I wanted to show you what the Tesseract was. In fact, what's his name? Lawrence Terrence Howard, Terrence Howard is expanding on that in not just the square shapes. And that's, if you watch that interview with Joe Rogan, what you see is that he's showing you the angles instead of the square of what you're seeing here. He's showing the angles, which was what Rawls talking about here, and it's what's in the flower of life in 4-dimensional rendering, which is what you're seeing here from a square standpoint. And let me pull up the flower of life and show you that in the 2-dimensional rendering, right? I can do the same thing and pull that image up. Let's do this here and pull this up on my screen. If I can get this up in a larger fashion. No, because it's taking me to somebody's website. I hate when it does that. So I'll leave it on my screen like this. And let me come back over here and I'll unshare this image. Oh, I almost left the studio here. Stop sharing that image and then re-share this image on the screen. And you guys can see that flower of life. There's many different versions of it. Now, if you look at that, that's also a Tesseract, but that one is not squares. Do you see? That one is the geometric shapes that make up the triangles. Okay. And each one of those, say, circles that you see there that has a single point in the center with the legs going out is akin to that square having those legs coming from the square that's on the outside into the cube on the inside. The cube on the outside had those angles coming off of the corners going to the angles on the inside. That is the same representation mathematically of that particle, but that is not of the square, because the square is what he is saying is wrong with this image, is that it's 2-dimensional because they believe the earth was flat. So that square that you see that is a cube is an advance from the flat square of 2 dimensions into the minds of science in the 3 and 4 dimensional mindset, given the Fibonacci sequence and moving into our reality. And what he was showing in that video and his postulation in his theories in his book that he's written on his website is taking it one step further and going to the flower and saying they didn't unlock the flower of life past 2 dimensions into the 3rd and 4th dimension, which is what a tesseract does. And we've done that coming forward since 5,000 years ago, and no one has done it with anything else. And so all of our geometric shapes are all squares, where we have the dodecahedron and all of those octagonal shapes. They're still the same squares with no, and going further than what he talks about is the rounded shapes. But he's showing the points now of this geometric shape, and I and other people have talked about the circumference, that circle, and the spiral of the softness that they discovered that they're calling fractals when you look at it in the computer. The science still doesn't understand the fractals, so they don't understand what they're seeing, and they just like the tricks of the more you zoom in, the more it's identical no matter how far in you go, and they love how that's so beautiful, and they don't get it. They don't understand it themselves. Okay, so he's trying to unlock, Terence is unlocking this image to further, because these are spikes in the triangles that are coming up in all the triangles. And if you saw that video, he shows you how when you clump them all together, this being shown as a tesseract in 4-dimensional shape, or 3 dimensions, 4 dimensions, and then viewing it, when you make it a 4-dimensional shape or a 3-dimensional shape, and then you're viewing it, it becomes the 4-dimensional reality. And he's expanding everybody's consciousness. That's why, coming from my scientific mind and my physics background, that's why science, when he pulled those pieces up and handed them, and we're showing them on camera and on his website, and handed them to Joe Rogan, and then showed you that he made a drone out of them and that they could fly around and move, that's why science didn't go, he's crazy. And science is now going, holy fuck. And they're like jumping on his theories and trying to figure it out. So he's a very busy man now, because he took this and turned it into a tesseract where no one had ever done that before. And he is unlocking it and proved that. Terrence Howard. Yeah. Right. They're calling him mad now because he's revealing the truth. Absolutely. Peter just said that. Let me put that up on the screen. Peter said they're trying to call him crazy because he's showing the truth, and they will continue to try and disprove him for the next 100 years or so, the next 50 years. And but some people, like myself and others that I've seen out there, are also at this point saying, I want to talk to him as well, because let me pull this off the screen here, because they know what I know, and they're like, wait a minute, this changes a lot of stuff. So there is a group of people scientifically that were already onto this kind of ideology, including changing pi from 22/7 to represent, because 22/7 represents it as 3.1459567 something or other, and then it repeats after 7 digits. And there's some people that took that further and said that pi should be calculated by our numbers as 344 over 168 or 148. Don't quote me on that. Something similar to that. And that calculates pi to, instead of 3.1459, so it calculates pi as to 3.1441. Okay, so it's 8 hundredths of a percent closer to a whole number than 3.1459. Do you understand that? So the math is better, closer to finding pi as a whole number. And Terence Howard, with his tesseract and unlocking the tree of life in a 3-dimensional, 4-dimensional way, is going to shift that even further to, or closer to, probably 3.149 or even or less. So it's getting closer. So instead of winding up longer numbers, it's winding down so that it'll become like 3.15, right? And then eventually 6, 7, 8, 9, and then 3 point, instead of 1, it'll go down the other way. It'll go down, and eventually it'll be probably down to 3 eventually. when we get the calculation right, it'll become the 3 number. It'll be perfect. And science is kind of starting to get onto that idea that it's going to wind down to the whole number of 3, not up to the whole number of 4, which is what they thought that it was going to do. And everyone said that's wrong thinking. It's not going to wind up. It's overshooting because we're counting wrong. It should be winding down. So they believe, some of us in the science world believe that literally it's going to wind down to 3, to the perfect number, or it's going to make it all the way to 6. Chances are it's going to go to 3 and then 3. 3 and 3 is 6. So so when we, as a society, as a world, expand our consciousness to the point of calculating by 12 instead of calculating by tens, that's going to help, because then we're going to be calculating in the 369. Getting back on point with Ra, talking about everything that Ra was referring to here is the controlling factor. He said, then you become the potentiation, the alpha and the omega, the beginning and the end. The beginning is 3. The omega, alpha is 3. Omega is 9. Higgs boson, controlling factor. Okay, so this is where, if you've been paying attention to what I've been rambling about for the last 3 hours, almost, this is the full circle of this. That's why I wanted to go back and start this session over and come to fruition and get exactly where I am, and mention Thoth and everything else in the 369, because science, some of us have been on to pi is calculated wrong, and we believe the Egyptians calculated it as the number 3. It was 33 cubits, 3 plus 3. Okay, so they were counting 33 cubits. So the only way that pi is wrong for us, because we're calculating it the wrong math, because our math is based on our technology today, which is wrong. And what Terrence Howard was saying is that they've been calculating everything from the perspective of the earth is flat. So all of our renderings have been 2-dimensional. And then when they tried to put it into a 3rd dimension, all they could get was the squares out of it, to the building blocks. That's why they're called building blocks, because they're blocks, they're squares. And then they added another square and another square and another square and another square. And then we have tetrahedron, dodecahedron, and all of that. Octahedron, when you go from 3 to 4 to 5 to oct being 8, right? Dodecahedron is literally telling you how many zeros is in each one. So it's a square within a square within a square within a square, or adding squares on top of squares, which is exactly the tesseract. And trying to expand out from a square by building blocks. And that is what everything is based on in our mathematics. And I have always believed that can't be right. And that's why I got onto phi, which is 1.168, 1.618. And that's the spiral. The Fibonacci sequence is the squares, the rectangles. The phi, the golden mean ratio, is the outside arc from square to square point as it expands out. So it's the other half of the equation that I've been preaching now since I was 18 years of age, and really hardly preaching it in the last 7 years. Okay, I just haven't wrote it in a book, and I'm going to put it in this book that I'm currently writing, not the one that's about to come out, but the one that'll be out in a couple of years, because the society's ready for it. And so now I'm going to show it, and it'll be out in a couple of years, which I wish I could get it out now that Terrence Lawrence came up with his stuff, or Terrence Howard came up with his stuff, but they're all calling him crazy, like Peter said, because some of them are just like, there's no way that man could know better than me. Therefore, he's nuts. He's crazy. And that is what they did with Einstein. That's what they do with everyone until you practically show it. You have to empirically blow something up with your technology, and then they go, wow, okay, maybe it's right. And then science gets onto it. It's usually after you've died, so you don't get credit for it, and somebody takes your knowledge and then goes further with your knowledge. That's what's going to happen, is you're going to have people theorizing past, using his theories to further their theories. So this is why I'm going to put this out, talking about spirituality. I'm trying to unite. This is what I've always been doing. I'm trying to unite science and religion, but taking the spirituality out of religion and taking the non-spirituality out of science and marrying them back to the way they were. Hence the reality about reality returning to the old ways. Thousands of years ago, those were synonymous. Spiritual way of thinking, even though they thought the world was flat, spiritual way of thinking and science were two halves of the same whole, one being physical and one being non-physical, but intricate parts of the same thing. That is what this place and the expansion of this place is supposed to teach you. You become aware of the physicality, science. You run down asking all those questions about science, and none of them get answered eventually. They just pose more questions. And then you start looking in the spiritual sense and wonder, what if there is a spiritual side to it? You're supposed to do that. What if there's a spiritual thing? What if there's another D to 3D? What if it's not just dimension? What if it's density? And what does that mean? And once you do that and expand your consciousness into the spiritual realm, that there is one, that there are two parts to this place. One is physical and one is astral. You don't reside in the physical. This body does. You reside in the astral, and you are plugged into this physical like our 3D goggles are when you put them on. You're plugged into this avatar in the 3D. But you are not this avatar in the 3D. That expansion of the consciousness is what's happening now. In 1984, when Ra was trying to tell people about it in this Law of One books, nobody was ready to even fathom that, because all of science were atheists and you couldn't be in any way religious or spiritual. Now, secretly, a lot of those people still are spiritual, but they won't say it out loud because they know that all their money will be taken from them, because the evil controllers still control the narrative. And if you want a job at MIT, you do not talk about Fight Club. Period. It's time that people stop listening to them. And that's how things got done when Einstein came up with the theory of relativity. That's how when things got done when Copernicus came up with his theories, or when all these people everywhere in history came up with all their theories. They were not asking permission, and they were not worried about getting paid by governments and grants for colleges. They just wrote their shit and thought it up, and then tested their things in their own houses, and then printed it and left it for people and taught people about it. Science has gotten away from that because the controllers are controlling everything, and it has not been that way ever since. Until you onesie-twosies people like Terrence Howard, who just look at this stuff on his own with other people that he's working with, and they come up with this stuff. Some of us have done that. I did that. I got away from that machine. I could have gone to work for them and learned all kinds of secrets that the skunk works would have taught me. And I would never be able to tell any of you. You would have never met me, and I would be no one right now. I'd be a ghost in the machine. I was already called that anyway. One of my nicknames was Ghost in the Machine for years, because everything that I did was behind the scenes and no one even knew that I was doing any of it. And there was no footprint of this human being doing any of it. And I've done, my entire life has been working like that. Now I'm stepping up in the forefront and going, oh, by the way, I have some knowledge that I'm trying to tell you guys about that I've been secretly working on behind the scenes and secretly passing on to other people and working with all around the world to expand your consciousness. And now they pushed me into the light and said, it's time for you to step forward and take credit for it. I can't take credit for some of it, because if so, I'd have to tell people in the world who I was pretending to be when I was younger, right? And some of the bad people just want me to do that, because then they can go, oh, you've admitted, we're going to put you in jail for doing that stuff if we did something we didn't approve of. So that will never come out. I have to know that. So now what I'm doing is I'm trying to uncover that information with the book that I have, with my podcast, and the book that I'm writing to come out later. Don't care what people think about me. And I'll guarantee you that Terrence Howard doesn't care if they think he's crazy either, or he wouldn't have been talking about what he's talking about. Because they're going to call you crazy. They have to, because you're challenging the status quo. You're challenging that which they have used to control this earth for thousands of years by just suggesting that things are different than they look like they are currently. Okay? That's why they have to say that you're crazy. Okay? Because they can't not. Because if you say, like in say Stargate, the movie that became Stargate, SG-1, Stargate Atlantis, the spinoffs, in that movie, what happened here in the theory there was that Ra was here in Egypt, and that Ra was a bad guy, and he was an alien, and he was a symbiote inside of a human host, and that they were overthrown by the Egyptians because the Egyptians got the idea that that person's not a god. Then they left, and they buried the gate here after they left, so that Ra couldn't come back, and Ra never came back. Now, come forward in time, they found the Stargate, opened it up, and it went to this planet called Abydos, and humans, American military personnel from the Air Force, went through the Stargate to the other side, met other humans who were still looking like they were 4,500, 5,000 year old long ago Egyptians, dressing the same way, same culture. In fact, they were speaking a language that nobody has spoken out loud on this earth for more than 1,000 years. But Daniel Jackson, the doctor, was a linguist who was fluent in that language. Even though he didn't know how to speak it right, he could read it. So when he got back there, he met one of the people, started talking to the person. And when the person started talking, she corrected his language into the proper way of saying it. And he already had a working knowledge of the language, so it didn't take him long to figure out how to speak the language. So he was able to translate and talk to them. Then Ra shows up in his pyramid spaceship, comes down, and now there's a problem because Ra's like, who are these people? Finds out these are the people from Earth that overthrew him thousands of years ago. Now he's got to kill everybody that knows anything about it, and these people, and kill those people and everybody else. And then he's going to try and send a bomb back through to Earth to destroy Earth or destroy the gate so that they can't find him, because he sees that now they have the technology to be able to fight him, because now their technology is the same as the technology he has, except for he has space travel in a spaceship. But all the other technology is identical or close enough to our weapons that we brought with us when we went through. So because the humans have now evolved, they're now a threat to him as an alien species. So he has to kill them and anybody that knows anything about it. Why? Because Ra needs status quo to stay in control. That's what's going on here. They need status quo to stay in control. If everybody starts thinking for themselves on this earth and starts questioning what's going on around them, they lose control. Because people are going to wake up and go, wait a minute, no. How about that? And then when they go, well, we're gonna delete you from our platform. And when people stop caring about that, go ahead. Don't care. I'm still going to be talking to people in other ways that you can't control. That's what's happening now. That's why they fought so hard to keep Elon Musk from buying Twitter. That's why they're still going after him for his car company. They're still trying to ruin him because Twitter is there, and even evil people have to watch what's going on Twitter. They can't stop themselves. That's why when people are on Fox talking, or Tucker Carlson left and went to Twitter, guess who's all still watching him? Everybody from all the news agencies are still paying attention to Tucker Carlson because he still has an outlet to the world now. Do you see? So this is what's happening. People are now going, I don't care about your platforms. If you ban me from your platforms, I'm going to go to these other platforms where there's already a bunch of people on that are being run privately now that you don't control. So what's happening is their way of life is dying. Facebook is going to die. YouTube is going to die. TikTok is going to die. Okay. Those companies are going to die just like every company ebbs and flows. They have their day now and they're holding on as hard as they can. 10 years from now, no one's going to be on Facebook anymore. Already the kids are not there. All of the young generation is already on TikTok. Why do you think they're lobbying to get TikTok under their control, sold away from the Chinese? I'm not saying it's a great idea to keep it under the Chinese rule. It's just as bad. But they don't control it, so they don't have the narrative. They can't just ban you off that platform right now the way they can off of YouTube and off of, which they used to have, Twitter and on Facebook. Twitter's been bought by somebody who's freed it up. Other platforms are out there and getting bigger because the conservatives are all going there to talk to one another. Guess who's jumping over there too? The progressives, because they have to know what those guys are talking about. You can't leave them over there by themselves talking about stuff because they won't know. So they're over there too. So these companies are getting huge. Right now they call Facebook the place where old people go. So all the young people, everybody from the age of 10 or 11 to 28 is no longer on Facebook very much at all, if at all, or on YouTube. They're all over on TikTok and other places, Snapchat and other places. Those companies are getting huge. What's happening is everybody that's old is on YouTube and on Facebook. Okay. The average age of the average person on Facebook is 46. The average age of the average person on YouTube is 46. The average age of the average person on TikTok is 22. Do you understand that? The average age of the average person on Snapchat is about 28. And they're not over on these other platforms. So as people get older and age out and move to these other platforms where all the younger people are, because they're already starting to do it, right? Joe Biden's on TikTok. Donald Trump is on TikTok. Why? Because that's where the younger people who can vote are there. So when people start moving away from these places because they get tired of being kicked off of these places, and they're doing it, these places will die. And they know it. So they're starting to open they're expanding into these other platforms now because they know. That's why Meta has made a big deal of changing their name to Meta and their Instagram, and they're coming out with the goggles, and they're coming out with places that over on Instagram, they're now wanting you to have another app on Instagram to be able to chat. Not that you can't chat on Instagram already, but now they're already giving you a new one. Why? Because they know that the population of the people that are on Instagram is a age demographic as well. And it's the same age demographic. They call it the place for old people. So now they're trying to invent a new one to draw the young kids to and get people that are already on Instagram to populate it. Why? Status quo again. They're trying to evolve because they know that Facebook is going to be, probably in 10 years, people are not even going to remember it. They're going to go, what? What is that place? Oh, yeah, that's just like MySpace. I remember MySpace when there was no Facebook. Most people don't even know what MySpace is. It's still around, but it's real small. And those people aren't smart enough to expand it and evolve. I even said that at the time. I'm like, you guys need to evolve. If you guys would just change some things, you could be just as big as Facebook. But they refused to do that. Oh, no, we're going to stay this way because this is what some people want. So they have a little niche. They're okay with it, and they're not going to get ever very big. Everybody else changed to get people. When Zuckerberg started this, he was in his 20s. He was in college. And in fact, it was all pictures of hot chicks that were on there, then nude pictures. I remember looking at them. Nude pictures, and you were rating them. That's what they were. And then people started taking pictures of people without their permission at parties and posting them there, and you were rating them. That's how Facebook started. It was a pickup place and pictures of nude men and women that then turned into partying, and then they got rid of the nude stuff because they wanted to make it bigger. So they banned all the nude stuff, and it became like a dating platform, and then they started having people talk on there, and then it evolved into what it is. That's how it evolved. Okay. Status quo is what they're trying to keep now control of. That's changing. The dynamic is changing. Facebook is waning. Google is waning because other people are going to DuckDuckGo. DuckDuckGo went from, what is that place? To they have commercials on television now. Why? Because people are now going there so they won't have all these creepy ads following them around. It's going to get big. It's going to get huge. And people are going to they're going to lose contracts on cell phones. My cell phone has Google on it because my company, the company that I'm buying my phone from, has a contract to get it on there. Eventually, they're going to have contracts with other people and give you a choice because people are going to ask for it. I don't want Chrome. I don't want Google on my phone. Do you have a phone that doesn't have that? Eventually, enough people are going to say that, and they're going to stop using that and want to delete that off the phone, that eventually the companies are going to stop when their contract runs out. If they didn't sign a contract until the end of time, then other companies are going to come up that don't have those apps on there, and people are going to buy those instead. So they can't be tracked. That's evolution. That's what's going to happen. You're going to see things change exponentially between 2024 and 2032 on this earth. And if you're not ready for it and you're stuck on all these old platforms, you're going to see that happen where there's not going to be anybody on there anymore. Right now, there's still enough people because the average age of the average American is 68. Most of those people are on Facebook. That's why I still broadcast on there. Okay. But I'm also broadcasting on these other platforms. Why? because I'm going after the demographic. I deleted my thing off of TikTok, but I'm going to end up going back on there because that's the only place I'm going to be reaching, unless I go to Snapchat, people between the age of 18 and 30. Okay, because they're not all around here. There's some. They're on Instagram. There's a lot of people that are on Instagram because their parents won't let them go on TikTok. So there's a lot of young kids on Instagram. But the majority, 140 million Americans, 140 million Americans are on TikTok. The average age of that 140 million is 22. Okay. So that's where the reach is. That's why Peter kept telling me before to get on TikTok. Well, I was on there for 2 years and then I deleted it when they were having all this problem with whether they're going to ban it in this country. Well, they're going to sell it. They're going to figure out how to do that and they're going to sell it. And it's going to eventually not get banned in the United States because it'll go under control of the cabal. And so I'm already have an account that's on there right now that I'm not posting on. Eventually, I'm going to start posting on there again because that's where I'm going to have that reach, especially with my book coming out. I'm going to start posting on there. I'll send it to all of you guys. You'll see. I already have an account on there right now. I went and made sure it was still there the other day. I'm going to go there and start posting. And that's going to be my new account. And then I'm going to start, backdating some of the stuff that I made, my memes. I'm going to start posting on there. But you can't talk on there. There's no chat room to where you can talk. You can go on lives and talk, but there's no chat room. So everybody has to be someplace else. That's where Snapchat comes into play. All the same people that are on TikTok can't communicate with each other because there's no chatting. There's no talking. There's no groups where you can go into chat rooms and talk on TikTok. Well, the Chinese don't care right now. The company doesn't care right now because there's so many people that are on there just swiping. And they just did a study that the average person, the average American between 11 years of age and college grads, so somewhere in their mid-20s, have a hard time focusing after 6 seconds currently. So literally there's a study that shows that because of TikTok, that the average person's focus of attention is 6 seconds now, and they have a hard time concentrating after that. So now you have schools in America that are banning cell phones in classrooms. And the study that they did on that just came out the other day shows that the kids are addicted. They put it in a box and it's locked. And the kids are banging the box on things, trying to break it open to get to their phone, like a person who's addicted to drugs, who's desperate for their phone. And then eventually, after about a month of having to do that every day, they get used to the idea that they can't touch their phone until after school. And all of their parents say that there's a change in their kids when they don't have access to their phone all day long, and that it's for the better. And that by a month, they start realizing how much their kid had changed before walking around with that phone in their hand, staring at it at all times. They're actually starting to engage other people and have conversations. And I said this from the beginning, these are addictive and it's a drug. And people, when they come in my house, I'm like, turn that off. If I'm trying to talk to somebody and they're picking up their phone, and I'll stop talking and stare at them. I'll go, are you paying attention? I'm trying to have a conversation with you. Put your phone down. Let me know when you're done and I'll continue. And they get annoyed with me and they go, okay, fine. Right? You come over to my house to have a conversation and then you're sitting here flipping through your phone. You could do that at your house and just text me. Don't waste my time if you're going to come over with your phone and sit down and start playing with your phone. Put it down so that we can have a conversation. Somebody messages you, you can pick it up and look at it and set it down. Okay, you don't have to be sitting there on the phone going, because you're not going to remember anything because what you're focused on is the drug in your hand. People need to have interventions with children. Jobs, you should not have access to your phone. Goes in your locker. So we used to have to do with our cell phones. Goes in your locker and it stays there until you're on your break and you can check your cell phone. That's what they need to do in jobs now. People cannot have their phones on their person and start playing with them. Same thing with schools. You go into school, you check your phone in, or you leave it in your car, or you leave it in your locker. Then on breaks, you can go and look at them. They need to start doing that to get people unaddicted to this drug that is driving them. And these algorithms are aware of it, and they're doing it. Why? Status quo and control. It's being done by the controllers, by the Anunnaki, by the Orion Crusaders on purpose to dumb people down. China, the very people who created the algorithm that is TikTok, Their kids can only be on the internet on TikTok 1 hour a day. That's it. And when they're on TikTok, they can only have educational things to look at. That's it. You're bettering yourself or you're bettering yourself. That's it. All the other garbage is for Americans and everyone else in Europe and around the world. All of that is for you guys, not their own people. So they're limiting your knowledge and brain power and dumbing you down while they're enriching their own kids with the same algorithm. And they're not allowing their kids to be on the internet as much as everyone else. And they're not allowing us to see what their kids get to see. And it's all educational. It's on there if you look for it, because the algorithm follows you. So if you start looking for educational, you'll get educational. If you look for dumb things, you'll get dumb things. But they try to point you towards dumb things. It's all control. It's part of what Raw's trying to warn you about. Right? Yeah, Peter says it's completely different. TikTok in China is called Douyin, D-Y, let me put it up on the screen for you so you can see it. Different name, and it's called so then he was writing it out. So Douyin, and he wrote it D-U-Y-E-Y-I-N or D-O-I-A-N, Douyin, and that is what TikTok is called in China. And over there, it's educational. They don't get to see all the crap, the dumb stuff that we see. They don't get to all that. Okay. Why? Because they know what it's doing, the harm it's doing to the children. So they don't let their own children do it. They don't let their own children even have access to it. They don't even know that it exists unless they leave the country and come outside the country or hear about it, or they can't download it on their phone. Now, I'm not saying it's good what they're doing and controlling people, but look what they're doing to their own people. They're making sure their own people are getting educational things because they want their people to succeed. Even though they're controlling their people and they want their people to be slaves and robots, they're still wanting them to succeed because their end game plan is world domination, and they're going to have it. Okay, so the only way that we can get around is to realize that these cell phones are a drug. They're a drug. They're the same. They're the new drug. They're fentanyl. They're whatever the drug, alcohol was for our grandparents' generation. Okay, heroin, pot, whatever you want, whatever drug you see people doing. And these days, fentanyl is the worst one. Cocaine and crack and all of that going backwards in time. Cell phones. These are going to go down in history as the drug of this generation. It's already being recognized, and science is starting to pull that out by doing studies that it's a drug and people are addicted to it. And they literally, some kids are trying to commit suicide if you take their phone away from them. Kids were coming out and telling the federal government, if you ban TikTok, we will kill ourselves. That was what started them going, maybe this is serious. Not the threat, but maybe they think that it's that volatile. Why? Because they're drug addicts. It changes the same receptors in the brain that dopamine, the same drug that is in the brain that is the reward mechanism from doing dope or shooting heroin, is what people get from the apps, from the cell phone. I'm aware of it when I'm on my cell phone. My cell phone froze the other day and I had a panic attack, almost full blown. Even though I had a laptop sitting next to me that I had to wait for my phone to die because it froze before I could have access to my cell phone. I have a house phone that everybody laughs at. You have a house phone. Called my sister and said, my cell phone is dead. It froze again. I have to get a new cell phone. It's happening now every couple of months. So I'm going to have to upgrade. She's like, okay, mine's kind of getting weird too. So maybe I'll come up there and we'll go and upgrade our phones one of these times. Okay, let's plan on it. Go and get new phones. I have to go with her because we're on a family plan and she runs a family plan. And since I don't know any of the information, she has to be with me. So if I want to get a new phone, unless I pay for my own phone and I want to keep paying what I'm already paying, I have to have my sister with me. And so she's like, okay, we'll go and get you another phone. Sometimes it just freezes. And if it's got a full battery, I have to wait until that battery dies. So like right now I have it plugged in. It's at 100%. If it freezes right now, it won't die until tomorrow at about 9 o'clock in the morning. Okay. It'll just sit there until then. So when it does happen, I just turn it over upside down and set it on my nightstand and leave it there, or on the floor in my bedroom and leave it there until I wake up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom or something, or the next morning and go, okay, it's finally off. And I plug it in. And then once it charges enough to turn on, I turn it on, it reboots, and then I let it charge, and then it's fine. But I was like, oh my God, my cell phone. And I was like, you have a laptop. You can pull up your laptop and do the same thing your cell phone does. Why are you having this panic attack? And I'm like, wow, that's like a drug. I'm literally acting like I don't have any access to the world. Who cares? I didn't. I grew up in a time when we didn't have computers. I grew up in a time when computers just started. I grew up in a time when we didn't have smartphones. We had cell phones, but no smartphones. So it only was like a fleeting moment where I was like, what if somebody tries to contact me? Well, then I'll hear my laptop go bling bling. and who cares? If they can't get a hold of me, they can call my cell phone or call me on my laptop. I'll hear the ring. If somebody calls me on Messenger, my laptop will start ringing. I'll open it up and hit answer. Otherwise, they can call the house phone. But if I didn't have a house phone, then I have no communication with the outside world, which is exactly why I keep a house phone. Most people don't do that. And if your cell phone dies, you can't contact anyone. That's why my buddy Paul had like 3 cell phones in case one of his cell phones died. The problem was the perfect storm happened, and that's how he died. He gave one cell phone to his son, gave another cell phone to his girlfriend, and then he lost the cell phone that he had, and somebody picked it up and kept it and didn't turn it in. And he had no cell phone, and he had a catastrophic event and couldn't dial 911 because he had no house phone, because I told him he should have kept the house phone in the house just in case of emergencies. And he couldn't dial 911, and they found him dead 2 days after I spoke to him. Not about that, but I spoke to him. And then he lost his phone either that day or the next day. And they found him dead a couple of days later. Had he had a working phone, we don't know if he would have died. I don't know how, what if he could have dialed 911? We can speculate that. At least he would have had a chance. Dial 911, help, I'm dying, heart attack, whatever. But he had nothing, so they found him dead. Okay. I have a house phone and people laugh at me. I have a laptop and I have a house phone and a computer. Right. So I have access to the world. If I had to dial 911, I could pick up the house phone and dial 911. If my cell phone is down. Okay. So that's status quo. Controlling of the apps is status quo. Getting you addicted to the apps online and the cell phone is how they make their money. Tracking you and selling you to advertisers is how they make their money. That's status quo. That's part of the entire endeavor that Raw is warning you about. And then I got to go because now it's 6:45. That's the part of the entire endeavor, is them controlling everything to that degree to keep your attention and then dumb you down and keep you stupid. That's how they're doing it. This is what Raw's been warning about. This is what all of us have been warning about. It's very easy and very simple, but you have to manage your children. Just like you would have to manage them to not do drugs, not do fentanyl so they don't die. All of people around the world need to realize that the internet is a drug. Cell phones, especially smartphones with the apps, are the biggest drug. And eventually they're going to be banned and controlled. And they'll be around because it's technology. Nothing goes backwards. But they'll start to be banned in places. You're going to have restaurants where they had no smoking zones. You're going to have restaurants that are going to have no cell phone zone. You go in there and you have to turn your cell phone off. Can't be sitting there on your cell phone while you're eating dinner in this section, because people don't want to hear your phones and they don't want to see you doing it. You watch, mark my words. It's going to start in less than 10 years. You're going to go in and they're going to go cell phone or no non-cell phone section. Watch. That's what will happen. Mark my words. It will happen. And the first time you see it, you're going to go, holy crap, Leo talked about that a few years ago. And now it's happening. Because it's going to start in the home. It's going to go into the schools. Then it's going to go back into business. Can't have your cell phone while you're on the job. And you can go and pick it up at lunch or on your break. Otherwise, it has to be off. And if we find it on you, you're going to get written up. Same thing with school. Got to lock it up. You can't use it until after school. You get the teacher unlocks it, hands it back to you. You're going to have to start doing that because kids are hiding them. They're saying it's in my locker and it's in their pocket. They show you that with vaping, where the kid's taking the vape and pouring the smoke in his shirt in the middle of class, running to the locker and getting that, okay? Hiding because it's a drug. They're showing you that on television now. You're going to see commercials for cell phones doing the same thing in less than 5 years around the world because it's a drug and people are going to start doing that. Okay. So you're going to have to, Denise said, monitoring the kids. Kids learn better if they're not looking at their cell phone while the teacher's talking, or they're supposed to be taking a test and their phone goes bling and they're looking at it, showing it to their friends. That would never fly when we were kids. Never. But apparently they're letting them do it now. Jobs, you can't have your cell phone. All that has to be off, has to be put away. That's going to become a mandate. It's already been a mandate now in schools in some states, and people are trying to sue for their rights. And they're going to lose because you're going to have families that are going to be saying, I don't want my kids to have their phone in school. But families are scared now because they're so addicted to phones. Well, I want my kid to have that in case of emergencies. What if some crazy maniac is shooting up the school? I want my kid to what? Be able to dial 911 and talk to you before they die? That's what we've come to, is that you got to have a cell phone in case you can call 911 so the cops can do nothing and set up outside because they're incompetent and not come in and save anybody, so you can film yourself dying on the internet. Well, in case of emergencies, what if there's something happens to them, their car breaks down? Then we all had to deal with that forever. Since the beginning of time, we had to deal with that. So yeah, I agree. On your own time, they can have their cell phone. When they're supposed to be learning, they have to turn it off. They can't have it on their person because they're going to be tempted. It's a drug. They're going to pick it up and turn it on and pretend that they're watching the teacher, and they're going to be down here on their phone, looking up at the teacher and down at the phone. So you have to have them check it in. Just like when people go to parties, they started because the people didn't want people to be drunk driving. You came in and people said, check your keys. And everybody put their keys in this bowl. Nobody's getting out of here drunk without us checking first. That was concerted effort by people who wanted to keep people alive. You're going to have people doing the same thing. When you come into the house, put your phone in that bowl over there and you can take it when you leave. Turn it off so that we don't hear your phone going off. And that's what's going to start happening. People are going to start doing that on their own. Then they're going to mandate that their kids don't have a phone in the classroom and that they have to put it in their locker, and they're going to have the teachers get involved, and they're already starting to do it in some states. So that's going to continue to expand, and you're going to see that happen. And so you're going to have restaurants where you're going to walk in, man. You're going to walk into a restaurant, and they're going to be smoking or non-smoking. They don't even ask you that now because everything's non-smoking unless you're in a state where they still allow it. Out here in California, you just get set. Nobody smokes in a restaurant. I remember when I was 21, 22 years of age, when you'd walk in, they go smoking or non-smoking. Okay. So you're going to hear in the next 5 years, they're going to be like cell phone or non-cell phone. Phone or non-phone section. That's what's going to happen. When you go into the non-phone, you turn your phone off. And if somebody turns there, you hear a phone go off. Already when you're in church, they don't allow it. I remember when I was in church with the bishop, who was talking in front of the church, and I was one of the guards guarding the bishop, okay, because I'm a knight in the Knights of Columbus, so I was one of the ushers, and I was a personal guard to the bishop, and the bishop was trying to give mass, and somebody's phone rang, and the bishop stopped speaking, looked in the general area of where the phone was ringing, and said, I'll wait. And everybody turned and looked, and everybody was just sitting still, and nobody wanted to move, and one lady reached into her purse and turned her phone off, and we immediately walked over and said, come with us, ma'am. And she said, I turned it off. You were supposed to turn the phone off before you sat down. You're leaving. Come with us. And we pulled her out of the church, and she had to stand outside and listen to the mass from outside now. She lost her seat because she did not comply. So churches are already doing that. You don't get to use your phone. Maybe not all. I was a Roman Catholic church, and that was 15 years ago. 10 years ago. Wait, what year is this? 24? It was 14. Yeah, 10 years ago. So, but churches are already doing that. No cameras. We didn't let you take pictures. You can take pictures with the bishop after the mass. He's trying to give mass, doesn't need the flashes in his face. So if somebody takes a picture, you're removed. Somebody's on a cell phone, you're removed. Okay? So that's going to have to apply everywhere to get people to understand that it's not accepted. If you were in a movie theater, it wouldn't be acceptable if you're in a movie theater and your phone's ringing. That's why there's that commercial with Kevin Hart, and he's sitting there and he's at a retreat, and it's a silence retreat, and his phone rings and he goes, "Yep, sorry, I can't talk right now. I'm at a silent retreat." Right? Which is funny because he didn't turn his phone off. Had that happened in real life when he was at a silent retreat, his ass would be ass out, no matter how much he paid. You're done now. Get out of here. You're not supposed to have your phone here. They make you check it in, so he couldn't do that in real life. But it was funny. So you're going to see interventions happen, and you're going to see that it's going to we're going to have to, because the only way that we're going to get away from this drug this addiction and the harm that it's causing is to control it, like fentanyl. You're not going to legalize fentanyl. And if you do, to legalize fentanyl, you're going to have to control fentanyl so that people don't overdose. Right now, there's no control over it, and people are getting fentanyl put into everything, and they're dying from it. So they're going to have to really get in control of that. So some people get the idea of, like with heroin, well, if you control heroin and you make sure that they don't overdose, then you can control the population and change things. That's not the answer, but you do have to control things so that you lower the doses. So people, that's why they did it with marijuana, because the THC level was 105 and above on average. That's what I used to smoke, and that's what we wanted. So now they've lowered the average doses about 50 parts per million instead of 105, right? When people like me smoke that and go, that's like smoking crack. That's almost high. I got to smoke a whole freaking half an ounce of this to get high, because I want to get indica high, in the couch high. I want to get really high. So I would always want, so they still sell both, but it costs more. Before it was just one flat rate. And if you got the stuff that had lower THC, you were like, what is this, skunk bud? You grow it at your own house? This is crap. Well, then when they legalized it, that became the norm to have 25, 50, 75, and 100. But you have to pay for it, the higher value than the lower one, right? Before it was, everybody was trying to go high. The chemists were making it more THC. So it was stronger. That's what's gone on with fentanyl. They've made it stronger, is my point. So they're going to have to control it to lower that. So eventually they'll legalize fentanyl too, so they can control it and lower the dose so people don't overdose until they get people off of it. And it'll take a while, but it'll happen. Same thing with the phones. You got to control it and lower the dose. That's what you do by banning it in certain places. Lower the dose. Okay, I got to go. It's late. I got to get dinner because now it's 6:30. All right, guys. I love you guys. Have a great night. If I missed anything in the chat and you guys were asking questions, I apologize. I took my glasses off and kept talking. I love you guys. Have a great weekend. I'll keep you updated because tomorrow, or might not be until Monday now if they don't work on weekends, I will be approving so that it goes to print. Then it's just a matter of how long it takes them in production to print it and get it out. So my book should be out. It's progressing, and it should be out within the next month or two. And I'll let you guys know next week exactly. And if you're in the chat, you'll know sooner once I get a hold of them at the publisher and get my approval in to get them to send it to print, because that's where we are. And then they'll just try to slow things down to get more money out of me for advertising. But either way, I'm getting it pushed forward, and it's finally coming to fruition. And I'm already starting to write the next book, knowing it's going to take a year once I send it to the publisher. So it's going to take me probably a year to write it, and then I'll send it in, then another year. So it'll probably be out in a couple of years. All right, unless I can hurry it along, but it'll probably be a couple years before that book comes out. All right, guys, I love you guys. Have a great night. This has been Orion Rising. I'm your host, Leonard O'Neill. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or good morrow, depending on where in the world you are tuning into this show.